cars tore down Salatus's forest alley, boxed by centuries-old oaks and blooming bushes, while travelers killed time swapping tales about the kingdom of Grandale. Word is they ripped open a portal and hauled in heroes from another world, each blazing with uncanny powers meant to crush the Dark Lord. About a month ago, the summoning ripped through the city and sent everyone into a non-stop frenzy. Every street corner buzzes with theories about these mysterious heroes, each person shouting their own wild guess. Can they really defeat the ancient evil? The girls crowding the carriage's back seat erupted into excited chatter. Could these travelers really be the heroes of ancient legend? One girl's eyes sparkled as she hung on every word. She was spot on. Legends say some among them wield two unique powers at once. Who knows, maybe every one of them blazes with jaw-dropping skill, and ancient manuscripts brim with tales of them. No doubt, under these conditions they'll crush the Dark Lord in a heartbeat, and when the war begins, those mere mortal traders will snatch their share of the profit while the merchants in the carts already rub their hands, salivating over the rich deals to come. Tina, real heroes, that's what they called her, hung on every word of the storytellers, conjuring towering warriors who felled foes with a single sweep, and noble knights who'd gladly lay down their lives for a just cause. In her fantasies, Tina already saw the queen stride out, her fiery speech about preserving humanity, igniting young hearts, and forging young men into heroes. And Tina knew with such defenders, the kingdom would be safe. She ached to meet that person even once, certain her dream would ignite someday. And that stubborn hope propelled her through a dull, gray reality. Ms. Tina grinned, reveling that anyone in this world could now mentally dive into their own ability matrix, a miracle people once couldn't even dream of when it came to seeing their true potential. Some leap at the chance, even traveling from far-off places to be the first to test the mysterious function, convinced they'll uncover something special about themselves, their eyes blazing with anticipation. How many young souls have been smashed against reality's jagged rocks, and how many hopes blew to dust when the mirror of truth bared its face? Expectations betray. Only those who prove worthy rise as true heroes. Until recently, Akanos Kanata was a completely ordinary high school student. No special talents, no striking looks, just another face swallowed by the crowd. Every morning, like everyone else, he scrubbed himself clean, slammed down breakfast, and readied himself for a new school day. Then on the walk, he flashed friendly nods to every neighbor, the picture of good manners. A month after a band of high school students were ripped from their lives and summoned to the kingdom of Grandale, those first days were a living nightmare. Now they've adapted, wandering among majestic castles and rolling green hills. Since the summoning, the world stayed eerily still. The Dark Lord still prowls the realm, and that truth gnaws at the people and the summoned soul. Tamaki Saki bellowed Kanata's name, ripping it through the silence. She asked him to add more onigiri flavors. They were all the same, and he shot her a sharp, displeased look. She used to be the class representative, and her modest looks fool everyone. You'd never guess she wields the assassin's skill. In battle, she erupts into a lightning-fast, silent shadow, slipping between enemies. Suddenly, girls swarmed him, blasting him with complaints that there wasn't a single manga or magazine here. In their world, they'd casually grab a fresh stack of reading material every week, and he staggered back, stunned, begging them to tone down their fervor. He shrugged and calmly declared the shop only sells bottled tea and onigiri, admitted he doesn't even know how to expand the market or hone his skills. Be patient, he insisted, and one of the girls shot back, calling him mean. Sick of everyone ripping into his skill, he ran a shop with electricity, blasting air conditioning and bright lights, and the toilet even had paper and a working flush. A working computer hummed right here, ready for you to punch in orders. That knowledge lit a fierce confidence inside him. For modern people like them, that skill was pure gold despite the painfully limited choice of goods. Sometimes locals swing by the shop, swapping their wares for products from this world, eyes wide at the local wisdom. Akinoshi Kanata beams, eager to offer them something else. They'd even bring him exotic fruits, so surviving wasn't a problem. He bit into an apple when someone knocked on their door again. The bell's familiar chime, a cue the shop owner barely blinked at. The commoners of the third group, at least that's what they call them, keep getting drop-ins from a certain Kojima Shinji, tailor, Kawasaki Ryo, and even a telephone. And they rave about the local amenities, especially the bathroom. This time, when they peered in, they found Tamaki sprawled on a futon dead center in the store. When they demanded what was going on, she just shrugged and said she found it comfortable and convenient. And everyone stood there, baffled that anyone would choose such a strange place to rest. The shop owner waved Kawasaki away. No need to show off, and Ryo erupted into frantic apologies, spouting excuse after excuse as his face burned tomato red. He watched the chaos and couldn't ignore how loud they were. His nature demanded calm and razor-sharp focus, but right now he wasn't judging anyone. Balance mattered. You're sitting in class one moment, the next you're ripped into an unfamiliar place. Welcome, heroes. Prusa, ruler of Grandale's eastern kingdom, watched as, that day, Akanos finally grasped the new world and realized the new kingdom flung open unprecedented opportunities. But it demanded his total, unwavering dedication. In this world, a figure called the Dark Lord, a demon king of sorts, created monsters that unleashed a torrent of evil across the land. 2 of the continent's 7 states already smolder under the wreckage wrought by the Dark Lord's creations. On the brink of collapse, Grandale performed the ancient summoning rite tucked in the royal library's dust-choked tomes, pulling heroes from another world, and the outcome rewrote history. All 31 people from their class stood packed together, seized by a dire matter. Some clung to their friends in terror, some scanned the unfamiliar surroundings with keen curiosity, and some were already racing to piece together what was happening. Everyone's jaws dropped. Summoning normally brings 3, maybe 4 heroes, but today it unleashed a flood of them. Kuramochi Yuto, the local elite with top grades and a face that turned heads, shattered the silence, determined to extract the answers he needed from the ruler. Kanata couldn't stand him. He was utterly insufferable. He jabbed a finger, reminding her they were just schoolchildren, then blasted the question. Would she grant any student's wish to return to the old world if they begged to avoid fighting the Dark Lord? The queen snapped that they couldn't afford it. Tamaki Saki demanded to know why, her face going blank and fear flickering across it. Something dark and dangerous lurked behind the queen's decision, and even the village chief's voice trembled. The ruler's voice went cold. We don't possess the magic to reopen the portal. Defeat the Dark Lord, they said, and only then can we seize that power and cast the spell to send them home. Kanata knew there was only one way home. Take down this lord. He wasn't just a fearsome opponent, but a stone wall between Kanata and his family, between him and any normal life, and there was nowhere left to run. Kuramochi snapped a second question, his persistence teetering into outright harassment as he leveled a poisonous glare at the queen herself. He was always that nasty. He snarled. They were just ordinary people. How could ordinary folk possibly defeat the Dark Lord who rendered even the realm's mightiest warriors powerless? The queen snapped. They mustn't worry about it. A shocking truth hits. They've been granted powers people from the old world could never wield, and the ancient texts speak of heroes with those exact rare abilities that leave the Dark Lord exposed. She said their skills would reveal themselves the instant they thought about checking their status, and Akanos Kanata's curiosity snapped to life. He needed to know what abilities lurked inside him. A system window ripped onto the screen, shouting that it was checking the hero's status and certifying every one of his abilities. He landed a shop. He'd craved badass martial arts, or at worst magic, and fantasized about a harem of elves, catgirls, and fairies. Bad luck. The day after the summoning, the royal palace exploded into a full-blown hero training program, and the first task was brutal. Pick the powers they'd wield to topple the Dark Lord. Kuramochi Yuto, the protagonist who drove Akinos Kanata crazy, was handed 2 explosive gifts: immortality that revives him up to 5 times, and the goddess's blessing, granting mastery of every magic and a fearsome special defense. Kanata's blood boiled. This was brutally unfair. Karamochi spearheads the first main squad strong enough to stare down the Dark Lord and strike him head-on. Kanamori Jun, water mage, bends oceans into weapons. Kanai Mayoka, healer, stitches shattered bodies back to life. Sawano Ludi, shooter, rains down pinpoint death. Yuki Saki, swordsman, cleaves through armor with brutal grace. Natori Mitsuki, shield mage, plants an immovable bulwark. Minazuki Yui, spearman, strikes like a lightning-thrown spear. Kirishima Masaki, ice mage, freezes the field with a whisper of frost. And Tamaki Saki, assassin, melts into shadow to deliver the killing blow. The second squad and the first group's reserves surge forward to replace the wounded. They slapped a combat-incapable tag on the third detachment Kanata landed in, and relief blasted through him, leaving him speechless with glee. Even his friend Sugita Yuki, the fire mage, had landed a spot in the main cast. He lied to himself he wasn't jealous, but poisonous envy crept in and slowly devoured his self-confidence. A month after recruitment, starting with the third squad, more and more recruits cracked under the brutal training and unfamiliar world, and poured into Kanata's shop, where urgent talks about serious problems collapsed into heated debates about onigiri. Hope barely flickered. The protagonist obsessively wondered when they'd finally topple the Dark Lord, and whether they could even face him. Tamaki Saki caught his sad face and felt a cold certainty that something was terribly wrong. She shot straight to the hero, desperate to know what had happened, the sudden attention making him flinch with fear, while her raw, sincere concern shattered his defenses, and shame for hiding the truth flooded him. Flushing, the hero confessed everyone harbored important thoughts, himself included. They rarely crossed his mind, but when they did, they carved deep scars. She and her comrades, visitors of the first detachment, standing inside these walls, shoved him into disbelief. It had to be either a brazen challenge or fate's reckless experiment. At least that's how it seemed. Tamaki shrugged and replied casually that she was here for the air conditioning and the toilet with running water. It was blissfully comfortable. And the shop owner snapped, insisting she not sit on the table. She cut in. I don't want to go back there. Who would? Not everyone is willing to take on the Dark Lord. Sitting by the fire, swapping legends is one thing. But staring down that ancient evil when you know what's expected is something else entirely. That's what everyone thinks, even Aka knows. But she doesn't believe most people are thrilled. The girl nicknamed Assassin nodded. Few people like it. Tamaki scoffed that she couldn't care less about defeating the Dark Lord. The hero asked again to see if she was joking, but her weary, unblinking stare screamed she was dead serious. Maybe she was just totally spent. If her first squad can't beat him, they'll be trapped here forever. No sitting this one out. Invisible bonds of duty hold every one of them in place, so they have to win. She shot back that they'd all manage it, then suddenly swore she'd protect Kanata. Her bold promise shredded his pride and left him feeling useless. She smiled at her own words and fell silent. Her sweet, radiant grin so genuine that every worry melted away for a single heartbeat. Tamaki Saki tossed a bright wave and slipped into her room as relief flooded Kanata. At last the crowd had thinned and silence settled, and he hesitated, wondering whether to prop the doors open until the others returned, since there was nothing else to do. Kanamori burst in from nowhere, declaring they've lost a squad member. Minazuki Yohei, nicknamed Spearman, a man who comes here all the time. Kurmochi even claimed he was supposedly beside himself with worry that the boy had skipped training again, and the wanted man froze. Color drained from his face as his eyes skittered frantically side to side. He scrambled for an excuse, apologized, and said he'd felt sick, so he'd rested in the store because the air conditioning was on. While Kanata watched the hero's stiff, overly formal speech with growing suspicion, Konomori twisted a strange grin behind his back and declared he understood this turn of events, a sly half-smile curling his lips as an unkind light sparked in his eyes. What was he planning? He sneered and began to taunt, declaring this very shop is where the third squad's heroes gather, using it as a rundown refuge to rest and prop each other up against their worthlessness. Grinning, he spat the verdict. A fitting den for scum. The water mage pressed on, warning supplies would vanish and the land be swallowed by grass, when 3 people stepped up to block him, sneering. Who does he think he is? An otaku like him shouldn't get cocky just because he grabbed a powerful skill. Minazuki lunged in, inserting himself into the swelling clash. Tension coiled through him as the conflict grew. He demanded they not be rude to these two. His hands trembled and his voice wavered, making it obvious he was nervous for some reason. A tidal wall slammed through the shop, drenching everyone, Aquinos included, as spear-like arrows of water shredded in from every direction, like an unseen archer orchestrating an elemental ambush. What the hell? What was that? A guy dove behind the cash register to dodge the next wave while Kanamori stood stone-faced, watching like he was savoring the chaos he'd just unleashed. Water surged so high that the heroes bobbed like driftwood, and the once neat items on the shelves were swept free, the magical flood tugging with a life of its own and threatening to pull everything beneath its surface. And no one knew how long this tide would last, or how to prevent the consequences. So this is the kind of power Mori wields. Kanata knew he was strong, but not like this. He begged the water mage to stop, but it was useless. The mage was locked in his spell, deaf to every plea. That lowly worm actually had the gall to confront Kanamori himself, a member of the main team, and Kanamori's smile wasn't comforting but bone-chilling. He slowly lifted his hand, and the streams of water around him twisted and surged with renewed fury. He cackled maliciously, stunned to see that scum remained scum even in the other world. The very people who had tried to contradict him a few minutes ago. Amid the water's roar and his classmates' panicked screams, a calm, commanding voice cut through the chaos. He heard it, stunned, and spun toward the sound. No one had any hope of surviving his performances. He couldn't ignore it. Kuramochi Yuto himself was shouting his name. Yuto had urgent words for Kanata, so the one being addressed had better freeze before the water mage sweeps him away. To ask Kanamori, the squad leader stepped forward. The magician snapped his hands down and the raging elements instantly bowed to his command. A flash of respect laced with curiosity burning in his eyes. Akinos choked and spat the water he'd swallowed as the squad leader hovered over him and coolly greeted him by name. "Hello, Kanata?" Calm voice, razor-thin mockery beneath. The boy's eyes flew up as he snapped that he hadn't expected such cruelty from his classmate. They'd gone a month without speaking, but a month wasn't a reason to act like that. And Kurimochi didn't so much as flinch. What did he want to tell him? Yuto launched into an Albie Brief-style business-like pitch, his voice razor-serious, almost official, and the other man went rigid, struck by the strange, simultaneous sight of his classmate and a stranger. Wait, he actually wanted Kanata kicked out of the city? The first squad leader spat that Kanata's mere presence drives weaklings to abandon reality. The rot spread beyond the useless third squad. Main squad members were ditching real duty to flock to Okanos's shop. Discipline disintegrated, and Yuto had no idea how to stop this tide of idleness. The boy blurted he was worried too, wrestling his runaway thoughts as each word stung with a bitter, necessary truth. Uto continued, voice blazing. To claw their way back to the previous world, they must topple the Dark Lord at any cost, and they must unite and fight as one. He sneered that Kanata's power wasn't just useless, but dangerous, yanking the heroes off their mission, and told him to leave the city or he'd force him out. Would the shop owner really be cast out of the kingdom? He lunged into negotiations, desperate to keep the one thing he couldn't afford to lose, and told Kurimochi he understood. He just needed time to think. Yanked into an unfamiliar world, he staggered. And knowing the detachment leader, pity wasn't coming. The leader laughed and told Kanata he had until morning to think it over. Kane Mori smirked behind the local authority, thinking maybe the man would spare a few coins for the trip if the boy dropped to his knees and begged. And the boy snapped, "Everything's fine." Yuto crowed about his hand-picked elite squad, declared the Dark Lord's defeat inevitable, told the so-called loser Kanata he could relax, and that single word, inevitable, crawled under the shop owner's skin. Kurimochi declared he was looking beyond the foreseeable future, already picturing how, once he won and returned home, he'd single-handedly save the modern world. Akino stared at him like he'd gone mad. He locked eyes with Kanata and roared his mad plan. In today's world, thought is chained, and armed with godlike power, he'll return and bend everyone to his will. He realized the man had completely gone off the rails. His eyes burned with a mad fire. An unnatural grin split his face, and he was even more unpredictable than he'd been in the previous world. Maybe this was his true form. It didn't matter. He needed Kanata gone from the city, and when Kurimochi heard that Kanata understood, relief flooded him, and his thin lips curled into a satisfied smile. Before leaving, he shot a haughty glare over his shoulder and ordered him to pray for their victory against the Dark Lord, his voice dripping with arrogance as if victory already sat in his hands, even though the battle hadn't even begun. Some time later, Akino's Kanata lingered outside his convenience store, beaming that he even owned one, and insisted that if he just closed it and opened it again, everything would snap back into order while Tamaki gaped, utterly baffled. She bolted when she heard Minazuki and the rest of her squad were in big trouble, found the store reduced to ruins, and demanded of Kurimochi, "Do you really want Kanata to leave the Grandel Kingdom? That's despicable, never to be tolerated." She swore she'd tell him everything to his face, and worry etched her features. He staggered back, thrilled and stunned at once. Joy flared, but a roar of doubt cut through. Wasn't she one of the chosen ones, part of the first squad with Kanamori and Kurimochi? Wouldn't that shove her into an awkward spot? He couldn't bear to drag the first squad into this, and Tamaki Saki stood right among them. She snapped that the current chosen weren't equally involved. She'd told him that already, and he needed to start listening. Otherwise everything was fine, and Kanata didn't even believe it at first. Kurimochi grinds harder than anyone in the hero training program. Flanking him are Water Mage Kanamori, Ice Mage Kirishima, Shield Mage Mitsuki, and Saki, the swordsman. The rest, Assassin Girl included, sank into palace idleness as interest withered and many started ditching training. Only 5 actually grabbed active positions. It didn't start that way. At first they devoured lectures with razor focus. The moment the hands-on monster hunting lessons kicked off, their attitudes snapped and everything shifted. They had a mock battle with the orcs the other day, and Kirishima, the ice mage, peppered them with a storm of ice arrows, freezing everyone into utter terror. And Kanata said that after what happened to Kanamori earlier, he wasn't surprised at all. She snapped that Kanamori was worse. He took sadistic pleasure in dragging out a kill, picking the cruelest, most painful ways to make an opponent suffer. So no wonder she couldn't stand him. He asked what she thought about that psychopath, and Tamaki's mind snapped to Kurimochi. She knew way more about him than she wanted, but she decided to spill it all, because this conversation could save him from a lot of trouble. Outwardly ordinary, he's the palace's relentless top student. Assignments immaculate, training never missed, reputation spotless. Yet behind that perfect mask, something else lurks. She owned up that she'd always butted heads with him, and lately everyone had started to fear him. The hero pressed her again, urging her to spill exactly what was going on. The former class chief kicked off her story. After training, everyone went home safe, nothing out of the ordinary, while Kurimochi strode straight to the Crusaders' quarters, and Kanata told himself he must be imagining it. So Yuto's holed up every night with the stunning Crusaders. The hero snaps, "You lecherous idiot!" And Yuto, scrambling to cool the scene, blurts that Tamaki's priorities and grievances are totally bizarre. And it leaves her stunned. Kurimochi had become the queen's lover, and was already being hailed as the nation's future ruler. So Minazuki swallowed his protest and fell silent. Kanata, replaying recent events, realized Minazuki was clearly terrified of Kurimochi. If they were wrong, they'd be branded traitors for plotting against the royal court's favorite, and slammed into merciless punishment. The girl, exhausted, admitted that talking to the first squad's arrogant authority had become nearly impossible. Kanata brooded. After defeating the Lord Kurimochi, it was obvious he was plotting something sinister, and Tamaki Saki decided to relax, already spreading a blanket across the store floor. Time bled away. Dawn was only hours off, and now that the psychopath had seized control, he and Kanata were doomed to be blood enemies forever. The hero lay sleepless, the day's worries gnawing at him, and a long, ragged sigh ripped from his chest. Akinos clung to the hope that Tamaki could jolt the First Division's leader back to his senses. But a cautious voice in him said, "Don't stand in that man's way." And while that argument burned in his head, the assassin girl had already plunged into her 10th dream. Without warning, fiery arrows smashed through the shop windows with a deafening roar. Blinding flashes lit the room like lightning, and the hero staggered back, panic clawing at his chest. The young man barreled in and shook his friend awake. At first, she couldn't make sense of what had happened. Kanata snatched her hand and yanked her deeper into the building, squeezing it so hard her breath hitched. Half asleep and groggy, she fought to make sense of what had happened as a fog clouded her thoughts. He snapped that they had to check the surveillance cameras. They'd probably caught whoever dared to disturb their peace. A gasp ripped from them as the queen burst into view on horseback, encircled by armed guards. "This is Crusaders." Tamaki dove behind her classmate, clinging like a shadow, utterly unprepared for this. Kanata never expected the head of Grandale herself to storm in and confront him. Everything snapped into place. The hero knew she'd been sent by Kurimochi to drive him out, but Tamaki laughed it off. Why make things so messy? Maybe it was a power move to intimidate. Maybe they were banking on everyone backing down. A ringing voice sliced across the distance, charging down the corridors and making the air tremble. As it sharpened, it announced Crusade, Queen of Greydale. She had come to make her presence known. The church slammed down its judgment. Kanata, the shop owner, was branded a heretic and accused of siding with the Dark Lord. He heard the charge like a blow, and they cast him out of the kingdom forever. Kanata's jaw dropped when he learned Aquinos had supposedly committed a month-long spree of horrible crimes. What kind of madness was this? When did the man who spent most of his time in the store become such a brutal criminal? Tamaki hurled herself into his defense, insisting he'd never do such a thing. A brazen lie that crossed every line, and to everyone else it read as denial, not loyalty. Crushed by dozens of baseless accusations, the hero bowed his head over his desk. The truth was obvious. Kurimochi had spun lies to ruin his reputation. Who would sink that low? The queen's accusatory barrage rolled on, giving him no moment to think. She barked an order: submit at once and leave the country, or he'll be burned along with his shop. Kanata's thoughts snapped. If he couldn't escape this horror, he'd at least get Tamaki out. He jabbed a finger at the back door and roared for her to run before it was too late, and the assassin girl froze, stunned. She refused to abandon him under any circumstances and demanded they run away together, but the criminal snarled, "They're hunting me. Stay, and you won't escape the same fate." The shop owner proclaimed he'd give up. Luckily, a choice still stood. His words hung like a slab of iron as he surveyed the shop. maybe for the very last time. She whispered again that she didn't want this. Her voice a fragile crystal quivering on the edge of shattering, fear and indecision carved into her eyes. She ducked her head, a shy blush flaring as she reminded him of the promise she'd sworn. She'd protect him no matter what. Tears welled in her eyes. Was the class chief always this emotional? Kanata blinked, stunned. Akina tousled her soft hair with a feather-light touch and murmured for her not to worry about anything, his warm fingers gliding through the silky strands as if pouring calm directly into her. He vowed that if they escaped and met again, he'd let her use the toilet and buy her extra seaweed at the Giri. She only had to do exactly as he said. The answer hit her like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind out of her and leaving her jaw hanging open. She sent him packing. She haunted the store every single day. Not for any benefits, only because he was there. He ignored the assassin girl's attempt to speak and hurled her out the door to keep her safe. Kanata blurted a string of foolish vows, swearing he'd pray their squad would defeat the Dark Lord and begging her to take care of herself until the end. And Tamaki, tears spilling, admitted she'd met a rare idiot. She barked that he mustn't die and demanded he never forget her promise. Kanata waved a hand at her, her words burning in his mind as he stood frozen, staring toward where Tamaki had sprinted. An eerie clatter erupted behind him. He whirled around. Akanos declared to the guards he surrendered and wouldn't even resist, flashing empty palms and standing so open and bare that no weapon could be hidden. They closed in on the boy, swords razor-honed and hovering inches from his throat, while Kanata wore a calm mask as a storm of emotions raged inside him. The queen championed his surrender as the smartest play for a criminal, and with his hands raised, the hero watched the iron certainty in her eyes stamp him guilty. Looming over him, Crusade spat that they would most likely never see each other again. No wonder she spat useless at him. Guards shoved him out, and he staggered into the unknown with no idea where to go. The heavy door thundered shut behind him. The boy trudged on, swallowed by dark thoughts as he replayed what had happened. This was unbearable, so unfair. Why, of all people, had he turned out useless? What had he done wrong? Twilight rolled in above him. Where to go stayed unclear. Uncertainty gnawed at the hero. He plunged deeper into the Saladas forest and was swallowed by pitch-black darkness as ancient trees wove a dense canopy into an impenetrable vault overhead, while fallen leaves and twigs snapped and crunched beneath his boots, an unsettling drum to his steps. The darkness here swallowed every scrap of light so fiercely the fields around his grandmother's house looked bright by comparison. And Kanata scanned the black with panic clawing at his throat as an icy chill slid down his spine, and the night seemed to breathe. He aches to storm back into the city this instant, but if they catch him, they'll drag him to the pyre and burn him alive because he's exiled. If this keeps up, Kanata will end up a fallen hero among their classmates. At night in the forest, the faintest rustle of leaves can make your heart slam against your ribs. Akanos scanned the shadows, ears hunting every sound. His heart slammed at each snapping branch and every owl's hoot. Then a memory hit him. If the shop skill was his, he could summon it anywhere with a thought. He dared the test, ordered the shop to appear this instant, and his instincts were proven right as it blinked into existence. Kanata swept the store's cameras and froze. Ferocious animals stalked him on every feed. Each screen showed them closing in like a single hunting pack, teeth bared and poised to strike. Oh shit, they're swarming him from every direction. It hit him. They were being pulled to the light, so he had to plunge the entire store into darkness. Right now. He scanned the room but couldn't find the switch. His breaths chopped short, and his heart pounded against his ribs like a war drum. Sweat burned into his eyes, turning the world to haze as Kanata tore on in a frantic search. Was he gone? Horror slammed into Kino when he realized he owned the convenience store. He'd never needed to turn the lights off here. No switch anywhere? Maybe it answered to a clap. Kanata's brain snapped. Barricading the entrances was better than nothing, so he grabbed boxes and slammed them against the door to shield himself as much as he could, stunned at how this had happened when a sudden rustle sliced the silence. He whirled toward the sound and faced two bloodthirsty predators that had already breached the building, their yellow eyes blazing like twin fires, mouths drooling as sinister fangs gleamed. He froze, holding his breath as creatures unlike any feral dog or wolf, true monsters, loitered nearby, and Kanata knew he'd be finished the moment they chose to strike. He'd already surrendered. They'd stripped the shelves clean, devouring every scrap of food. Kanata fought to keep them from getting to him, but he fumbled. Something clattered from his grip, and every head snapped toward him. He thought this was the end, as the wolf-like creatures snapped to attention and zeroed in on the would-be hero. Nostrils quivering to scoop up the faintest scents, ears pivoting like locators, instincts roaring that prey was close. The search barely took a breath. He stood staring as a bizarre, monstrous creature barreled straight at him with another hot on its heels. Time slammed the brakes and every second stretched into an eternity. Luckily, the locked door bought him precious seconds, and Kanata exploded into action, his mind a lightning storm, tearing through every escape route that could save him. Time was slipping away and panic clawed at him. The first thing he saw was a fire extinguisher, kept in case of fire, and he didn't care what he used to attack. Relief surged at the find. He ripped the pin from the fire extinguisher, leveled the hose at the unwelcome wolves and yelled, "Hey, you wolves! How do you like that?" A geyser of foam exploded from the nozzle and slammed into the nearest predator's face. The beasts bared their fangs and froze, thrown off by the move. Confidence surged through Kanata. He had to keep up that relentless pressure, and they'd break and scatter in every direction. Suddenly, what's this? They're plowing through foam. Perfect, just what we needed. The extinguisher spat a few desperate puffs and died. The guy was talking to it like it had a heartbeat. Seriously, what kind of sick joke is this? One more second and he'd be dead. Realizing the extinguisher wouldn't start working again just by asking, Kanata choked out a nervous laugh, shoulders trembling and fingers still clutching the empty canister as the sound ricocheted off the walls, hollow in the silence. Despair slammed into Kanata. He could already see himself dying first, becoming prime prey for the very first monsters he'd ever faced, and he branded himself utterly useless. He blew out a ragged breath and pressed himself against the door as ravenous wolf-like things clawed at it. A fire extinguisher rested nearby, and the boxes he'd hoped would save him lay scattered all over the floor. Mom, Dad, Kat, Mimi, they're probably worrying about him right now. Their faces slammed into his memory one after another, fueling his strength even as they shredded his soul. A single question burned in him. Had Tamaki escaped? He conjured her face in an instant, smiling and hopeful as ever, and asked himself, was she unharmed? He had to survive for his family, and for her. If she discovered he'd died here, would she crumble into tears? During their last meeting, her gaze had been tight with concern, maybe even tenderness. Could he be wrong? Thoughts swarmed his mind. They weren't close. So why, facing what could be his last breath, did the hero's mind latch onto her? Maybe it was more than friendship or sympathy, or maybe just a defensive reflex? For now the storm has stilled, and everything hangs in breathless silence. He locked his gaze on the cameras, edged toward the door and peered inside. The silence slammed into him, wrong and ominous. After everything that had happened, suddenly no sound, not even a rustle. He flung the door open to a ravaged shop. Shattered glass glittered, food littered every aisle, and every corner screamed of an alien invasion. It was gone. He'd survived. Kanata slammed a hand to his brow against the brutal dawn, convinced the monsters feared those first rays, every muscle screaming from tension and fatigue, and being alive was all that mattered. A system window blasted onto the screen, declaring his store level had jumped. He hadn't expected it. What just happened? Those weren't just voices in his head, were they? After a day that shredded him to the bone, Kanata couldn't tell reality from fiction. An unrelenting torrent of events had pushed him to the brink of madness. Memory struck Canada. He could check his status with a single thought, so he seized the chance and did it then and there. He stared at his stats as his level shot up. He'd leveled up because he'd defended the store. That's it. He noticed more changes. Countless additions had been piled on, and he burned to check out every last one. Kanata collapsed, spent, his face buried in the cool marble tiles of his shop as the last hours detonated behind his eyes. A kaleidoscope of monster fights, frantic escapes, and desperate scrambles to survive. The day slammed into him with incident after incident, and the poor shop owner could only beg for sleep as waves of exhaustion rolled through him, and his thoughts blurred into haze. Sleep swallowed him whole. He missed the horse's frantic neigh at the window and every hint of danger, while shadows pooled and thickened along the path Mrs. Tina wandered. Too early to celebrate the peace. A sudden noise yanked him awake. Kanata's eyes opened slowly, anger laced with fury flaring in them, and this would be his second sleepless night. What happened again? Were Grandel's knights on his tail? That couldn't be. If that were the case, Kanata would have been killed earlier. Dying screams were already tearing through the nearby air. He hunched over the table, elbows planted, and the thought hit him like a punch. If not them, then who? The camera feeds were spotless, no leads, so there was only one move left. Handle it himself, in person. Kanata peered around the tree and froze. A carriage sat ahead, ringed by shadowy figures, the horse's ears twitching with alarm. Bandits were attacking her. He leaned in and his stomach dropped. One man was kicking another to death while his partner sat nearby watching. Bodies lay strewn everywhere, and behind the carriage he could make out bags and more accomplices. Horror slammed into Kanata. He had to bolt before anyone saw him, but it was already too late as the strange figures pivoted toward him, their eyes flashing cruel fire in the half-light. A young girl bolted past, yanking their focus off the hero. They shouted after her, but she forced herself not to look as her lungs seared from the sprint and her heart threatened to leap from her chest. Kanata's gaze slammed onto her and disbelief hit him. Someone had survived. She stood raw with terror, fresh tears shining in her eyes, shoulders trembling and fingers curled tight, screaming louder than any words. A cold, fierce certainty slammed into him. He had to protect her. How? Fear ripped against a desperate need to act. The decision stubbornly refused to come, and panic crashed over the hero, fogging his thoughts and stealing any clear, sober judgment. He mouthed, "Help her?" And the truth slammed into him. He couldn't take them on alone. They were armed, while the girl bolted, and every tiny footfall rang in his head like a blade. Kanata heard the bandits talking among themselves. They weren't planning to kill her. They meant to drag her off alive and have some fun. And when that sick intent landed, rage boiled in his chest. Fear shattered as a fierce morality snapped into place. He balled his fists. He wouldn't leave her to suffer, not when he came from another world and carried a solemn duty to shield the helpless, even if the kingdom had cast him out. His powers snapped back, and he resolved to conjure a shop right there, even if it meant muttering a painfully awkward spell. A quick sting of shame he swallowed for the greater good. Nobody saw it coming. The girl's eyes ignited with a fierce spark of salvation, and the bandits recoiled, stunned. Seizing the opening, Kanata yanked the shop's blinds open. The moment the invitation rang, she shot into her savior's shelter, knees trembling and barely steady, stifling her breath so no one would notice. The instant the magazine canopy slammed down and arrows couldn't reach them, the bandits knew they had to aim only at the legs to force a reaction that could save 2 lives. The store is safe inside, and Kanata only has to decide what to do next. But he's in deep trouble. His thoughts tangle into knots, his heart hammers, and the worst possible scenarios spin through his head. Eyes glued to the monitors, he watched bandits swarm the entrance. Confidence evaporated as he counted too many, moving with cold precision and splitting into small teams to sweep every angle. Kanata let his guard fall, sure the trouble was over. Then a new menace sprang up from nowhere. A mysterious stranger stood behind the hero, tongue-tied and unsure how to thank him. At last he locked his gaze on her and drank in every detail. Her wide eyes sparkled with happiness, yet the shock from before still clung to her. She hovered there, unsteady as if danger might be hiding nearby, and Kanata looked at her, thinking she was quite pretty. He blurted she might be of the elven race, then yanked the idea back. No time to think. Strange people in black were hammering inside, her face twisted with fear again, so something had to be done, and fast. They slammed a spear through the canopy, punching a hole anyone could spot with the naked eye or on camera. And the computer warned the guy he'd be facing as many as 3 bandits, so he tightened his jaw and readied himself for the fight. Kanata's jaw clenched, upset burning under his skin. The fire shutters wouldn't last long in a situation like this, and the nice lady nervously tugged his jacket like she needed proof it was real. He whipped around and caught the hopeful shine in her eyes. Those puppy eyes could melt anyone, and if he were a cool, superpowered hero, he'd have swooped in and saved her in a flawless, cinematic sweep long ago. But reality was a cruel, unforgiving beast. The little girl needed comfort. Kanata wrapped his arms around her shoulders, locked eyes with her, and vowed he'd be the bait when the bandits broke in, buying her a chance to escape. He vowed he'd keep her safe while he was here. His boldness hit her like a spark, making her flush and crack a shy, pleased smile she couldn't suppress. Glass cracked, and the bandits' shouts snapped them around as 3 scoundrels burst inside, snarling for the runt, what they called Kanata, to show himself. Then they kicked and smashed everything in sight. Seething at the unknown, they glare. What kind of building is this? Enough of these games. One of them suddenly spots a closed door and jabs a finger at it, signaling the victim and her rescuer might be hiding behind it. Kanata barely registered their arrival before a blade sliced the door beside them. The other man dropped into a crouch to buy a few heartbeats if they saw him, and he had to scramble for a plan. Memory slammed into him. Yesterday he'd driven those ferocious monsters away with a fire extinguisher. Kanata grabbed that miracle canister, readied it again, and with it right at hand, the stunned criminals let the girl slip to safety. He'd just laid out his brilliant plan to her when a cold knot tightened in his stomach. Something was wrong. The computer's camera screamed an alert. Another bandit prowling right outside the store. Are you kidding me? This ruins everything. What should the hero do now? Rush the attacker and let her slip away, even if that destroys any chance to lock down the people inside. The plan's rigid lack of options burned him. He needed something smarter. They needed a plan now. An axe blade bit into the door as the bandits outside howled threats to kill them both, and the girl curled in a corner, barely holding back her tears. A lightning bolt realization. The fire alarm was the key to saving the girl. The attackers would never see it coming, and for the guy it felt like the only real shot at breaking free. Fear seized Grandale when the strange sound split the air. This technology was new to their world. Old-timers shook their heads, whispering of witchcraft, while youngsters pressed to their windows, wide-eyed and hunting the sound's source. He snatched a box of matches, struck one, and shoved the fiery tip up to the ceiling device, certain the bandits wouldn't see this coming. Kanata was right. Shock and terror ripped through them. When the water crashed down, they froze, clueless where to run, while the bandits skittered like cornered beasts, frantic and helpless against the deluge. Convinced it was magic, the bandits collapsed. Some from shock, others skidding on suddenly slick tiles, as their eyes bulged watching their weapons rip from their hands and hover mid-air, puppeted by a nameless force. The noise will yank the bandits' focus off their target and by Kanata. Crouched beneath the table with the pretty stranger, a shot to bolt. Someone might hear it and come charging to help. A savage roar tore through the room and the boy and girl froze. Could a black wolf have slipped inside? I refused to tempt fate and risk frightening this gentle lady any further. Kanata's eyes snapped to them, every muscle coiled. Were these really the same monsters from last night? Time to shut that screaming fire alarm down. The rushing water snapped off in a heartbeat. The din eased a notch, then eased again until calm crept in. We already had enough racket, so give the device credit for doing its job. The bandits howled and scattered, tossing their wounded aside the moment the monsters loomed. Panic ripped through them. Nobody wanted to be eaten, so they bolted, proving they never should have come here. They even forgot one of them, and a ravenous beast instantly loomed over his stark silhouette. Kanata and the stranger clung to a desperate hope this horror would end as she crushed herself against him, hands clamped over her ears. The shop owner pressed a hand to her head to calm her, his heart aching at every sob. And when silence fell, Kanata snapped his head up to check while the girl dared not look up. Once he was sure she was no longer in danger, he blurted that the bandits and their wolves were gone, and everything was fine now, while her eyes stayed tucked beneath a canopy of thick black eyelashes. Silence fell, and he drank her in. The perfect oval of her face, strands of hair laid like art, a modest yet costly outfit she clutched like a lifeline, as if it could save her. Akinoshi reeled, confused, as it slammed into him that certain situations could ignite some senses and snuff out others. He plunged into the problem, so locked in he didn't even notice he'd been holding that sweet girl in his arms the whole time. Kanata fumbled to look normal so she wouldn't think anything strange, and she just kept staring at him, waiting for something. Had he overstepped? He'd only saved her life. The touches weren't born of thought, only reflex. He tried and failed to convince himself he wasn't bad. He had to pull himself together. Kanata froze as the girl suddenly shattered the silence for the first time that evening, screaming she was terrified. Lucky the building was empty, so no one could react badly to the outcry. Her pain was utterly justified. The shop owner nearly broke, and when she clung to his chest again, choking on bitter sobs, he could only keep stroking her light hair. Memory slammed into him. He had to race to restore the shop before the monsters returned. After everything, the building looked ruined. The screen and doors were riddled with holes, and the parquet lay completely sodden. Fear and pain still clung to her, and Kanata wouldn't leave things like this. He set his jaw, vowing to calm this sweet stranger first, and only then face whatever came next. She was so tiny his palms could almost cover her entire back. Kanata barely had time to hug her when the sharp chime of a system window blared, announcing his level had risen. Irritation flared and he snapped to check his status. Out of every detail, the hero's gaze snapped to the light switch plate. It hadn't been there before, and the store owner stood frozen, utterly perplexed. Why did she only show up on the 3rd level? She could have been here from the very start. Kanata's fury exploded, and the mysterious stranger recoiled, shaken by the savage outburst from her protector, who'd been calm just moments before. Striding through Saladas, the young lady led Kanata westward, crackling with energy, and fear burned from her eyes, even as the forest bristled with hidden, deadly secrets. She clasped the shopkeeper's hand as if they'd been inseparable for years, and awkwardness slammed into him again. If all went well, they'd reach the city in a few days. The stranger's grin blazed as she thanked the guy for what he'd done and introduced herself as Tina Arnuish. She was only 16. She announced she was Sahara Arnuhish's daughter, the merchant from Kadena, the very city they were barreling toward through the forest, and the boy hung on every word, spellbound. Though only 16 like him, she wore independence like armor. As Tina pushed the tale forward, her memory snapped to that recent nightmare. The carriage bound for the kingdom of Grandale, piled with cargo, thundered down the road. Then local bandits burst from the trees and pounced. The servants who hid our newcomer during the raid paid with their lives. Kanata rounded the corner and found their bodies. The sight shattered the young lady's psyche, and she flinched at even the thought. She begged him to bury them and thanked Kanata again, and he snapped that he couldn't just walk away. The moral code hammered into him wouldn't let him turn his back. Tina itched to blurt an immodest question, and preemptively offered an apology. Respect shone through every remark she made, and she kept thanking him, or slipping in quick apologies every now and then. She decided to find out how her savior was doing. Could he possibly be some famous magician? He blinked, taken aback. He was utterly ordinary, his clothes shouting it, and he couldn't imagine anyone mistaking him for a magician. Kanata blurted his name and claimed he technically held the title of shop hero from another world. And just as he was about to admit it hadn't turned out like he'd expected, Tina cut in, eyes wide, asking if he really hadn't always lived here. She was stunned. Could he really be a legendary hero ripped from another world? The girl's eyes snapped wide. The hero watched, certain her jaw would drop with delight. Kanata couldn't fathom this was anything special, and Tina dove straight into what she'd heard. In the kingdom of Grandale, everyone knows heroes from other worlds exist. Countless tomes and legends lay out, blow by blow, how they crushed evil and saved the world, and the young lady has devoured those tales. He was convinced they'd been immortalized on the same legendary level as King Arthur, Perseus, and Japan's Yamato Takeru. If true, it meant the staggering honor of being counted alongside those icons. If Tina found out Kanata wasn't a hero, but just an outcast, she'd be crushed. And the thought that was probably true tore him up inside. Swallowing the dread, the shop owner thrust the question at the girl. Did she know the way back from the forest? She shot back a steady, yes. Tina revealed she'd roamed the trade routes for years. This place's nearest settlement was her hometown. Then she pledged to be the hero's guide, and locked him in the same piercing stare until he answered. Kanata hadn't even dared imagine it could happen. When he finally asked, she burst into a smile, and he knew right then this cutie would jump in and help him with anything. At last he agreed to go with him, but a single gnawing doubt churned in his gut. She never let go, gripping his hand while they walked, ate, even during gymnastics. And Kanata, totally unaccustomed, wondered if every girl in this world was that fearless. For him, an eternal loner, it was pure torture. Sometimes his embarrassment flared across his face, and she'd turn her worried little face to him, eyes searching if he was okay, and poised to spring to his aid at a moment's notice. He fired off, "I'm fine," and before he knew it, blurted a pet name for her. His reflexes and iron self-control snapped him back, and he fixed it in a heartbeat. Kanata scrambled to change the subject and urged Tina to flee the forest at once before monsters or bandits could strike again. The hero pressed the young lady with a sharp question. Were all the monsters in this world nocturnal? He needed to confirm the hunch he'd formed when he first ran into those wolf-like creatures, and he held them up as the example so she'd understand. Tina shot back. Yes, legions of monsters wield powerful magic and still move under the sun. Bandits strike in broad daylight, so the heroes had to stay on guard. Kanata nodded with the girls, a cold dread seizing him. Even after everything, the threat hadn't eased. The boy jabbed at our new recruit, demanding where they were headed. Kadena? And Kanata shot back, desperate to know if he'd heard right. Was he also bound to Grandale's control? His face was a coiled wire, every tight line betraying an urge to flee any place tied to that kingdom. Tina, meeting him practically for the first time, has no idea about his recent tragic past. Malady declared Kadena an independent, fortified city, born of bold, free traders. It still thrummed with commerce, and stood as one of the continent's most famed trading hubs. Kanata's breath hitched. There had to be freedom there, and a single story was enough to spark an all-consuming curiosity. She shrugged that she couldn't call it freedom, yet her eyes lit up at the unimaginably beautiful atmosphere inside. 10 grueling days on foot stood between them and Kadena. By day they pushed through the forest. By night they hunkered down in a store, hiding from bandits and monsters. Tina gushed over the guy's shop, especially the BLT and milk tea, shouting, It's simply delicious. Every time, while Kanata snapped at her to slow down before she choked. Kanata's breath hitched as he blurted out whether their world had been at war with the Dark Lord's army for over 100 years. The unlady's face went cold as she confirmed, saying this very year is the exact 100th anniversary of the first battle. Her words slammed into him and flipped his certainty. When he first arrived and heard Queen Crusade, he'd thought the crisis was brand new and they'd have time to train the heroes. He was dead wrong. He locked eyes with Tina Arnuish as she laid bare the toll of years of war, and he heard of all they'd lost. People whispered the Dark Lord's territories kept swelling, devouring new lands. Desperate to fix everything, the kings of every realm banded together and unleashed the so-called summoning ritual. And in recent years, not a single nation has pulled it off. For the first time in 12 years, Grandale erupted with the news that a hero from another world had been successfully summoned. Not one, but 31. And Kanata's blood ran cold as they realized their entire class had been called up to plug the army's manpower gap. As the Overlord's army crashed down, hope flared for the first time, and every single soul pinned their desperate faith on the heroes. The high school kids who never imagined they'd be dragged into a fight like this. He hung on her every word, said he understood, but doubt gnawed at him. Could he really live up to everyone's expectations? Tina snapped, insisting. Mr. Kanata, as she called him, was strong, handsome, kind, sensible, and wonderful. And it baffled the guy again as his cheeks bloomed treacherously pink and his gaze involuntarily slid to the side. She reminded him he'd saved her life, and that single truth crowned the shop owner Akanos Kanata the greatest hero. Her voice trembling and her eyes flooding with grateful tears. He reached for a thank you, then doubt detonated. Did he deserve these honors? Memories of his failures slammed into him, and he wondered, can someone like him really be a hero? He'd come from another world, but they banished him and slapped the name useless on him. Now that word is gouged into his very being. He almost decided not to tell her. He couldn't risk telling her the truth now. So he forced out a thank you and slapped on a calm smile, pretending everything was okay. Kanata tucked the conversation away for later, and the girl, still buzzing with excitement, leaned in to fire off another question. Tina prodded him in a wheedling voice, pleading to know what he'd do after arriving in the city. He shrugged and admitted he had no specific plans. Never had. She beamed and invited him to stay with her, insisting her father would gladly welcome the man who'd saved his daughter's life. Convinced he harbored an endless trove of tales, Arnuish leaned in, eyes sparkling with childlike curiosity whenever he plunged into another adventure. Kanata cringed as he confessed he knew almost nothing about this world, but the admission handed him the perfect excuse to linger with its people. He fretted about burdening the girl's family, and she beamed that they'd be only too happy to have him. When the hero thanked her, she brushed it off like it was obvious, gave a small wave and smile, and you could tell helping others was as natural to her as breathing. Not a shred of falsehood in her voice. Akanos didn't spare a single thought for the future. He was swamped. His shop's stock had exploded, and that surge screamed that now might be the perfect moment to start a business. You can't hide in the store forever. Start inching out of your comfort zone, face the wild outside, and steel yourself for every curveball it can sling at you. A spark ignited in him. He was stunned to discover that having a real goal felt insanely cool. He'd always dismissed such ambitions as the refuge of naive dreamers. But the reality was far more mundane. He raced to the city with his new, effervescent sweetheart at his side. She threw her full support behind the plan. Her presence ignited him, turning his usual reserve into crackling energy. 10 days later, they rolled into the city of Kadena. Weary but alive with hope, the travelers paused to gulp air and drink in the streets, knowing that after the long road, their real adventure was only beginning. She jabbed a finger at Kanata and crowed, "This is my hometown. Just look at it." As the panorama that unfurled held every eye captive, the city sprawled, enormous. Kanata's breath caught as ancient structures clung to towering mountain cliffs. He'd come here without any idea it could be this beautiful. Standing in Otaku, he gaped. They even held anime festivals here. Tina blinked, baffled since this clashed with local tastes, and Kanata jabbed the air to make the point. There were a ton of people. He grinned and told her that back home anime festivals are always packed, just like here. And she hung on every word, eyes alight as she pictured a roaring sea of cosplayers and fans united by a fierce love of Japanese culture. Tina gushed it was gorgeous, saying she'd heard legendary tales from other heroes about Akihabara and Ikebukuro and desperately wanted to see them. The hero felt a sudden ache at how utterly different everything here was. Every thought hammered on one desperate question. If he could return, could he steal this sweet girl away and forge a life of happiness far from this world? She deserved better, and he would give it to her. They could blaze across this world on epic adventures, and even vanquish the Dark Lord. Then what? Will he ever see Tina again, the one transported into his world? Can they still live happily ever after? The truth slammed into him. It was probably impossible. He nearly sobbed, and before he knew it blurted, "Real life doesn't hand out happy endings." A confession that froze his partner. Tina felt joy crash through her the moment she stepped back into her home after everything she'd endured. Tears sprang to her eyes. She clutched his hand again, voice trembling, and declared they were here only because of him. She could never thank him enough in her whole life. This service was priceless. She lunged forward, voice raw, begging the hero to let her repay him in another way. Kanata blinked, baffled, not sure what she meant. She pleaded with him to look after her from then on, swearing she'd live for him alone. And he froze, astonished, unable to imagine a single soul whose heart would not stand still before her angelic eyes and words. Kanata tried to protest he'd done nothing special, but the words choked in his throat. Her delicate hands trembled as she clutched the folds of her dress, and he'd never before faced such raw, unwavering sincerity and devotion. No, he should be thanking Tina. Panicked, he scrambled for an excuse and, confused, blurted that without her, he'd have been lost in this forest, and only God knows what would have happened to him next. She beamed, thrilled she could help her savior, and pressed her request again, brushing aside his nervous chuckle and the crimson blush of his embarrassment. All at once their gaze snagged on it and wouldn't let go. It was their turn. Guards peered from beneath iron helmets, the air snapping tight as the weight of their stares bored into each traveler. Tina burst into wild joy, and the guy froze, stunned. Is that all? Isn't it all too easy? What if Tina's father wielded far more power than Kanata ever guessed? If the girl he rescued turned out to be a millionaire's daughter, the whole thing would scream straight out of a romance manga. And Tina insisted she had a special pass. He scanned the queue. Faces from everywhere, but a single invisible thread bound them. Could they all be citizens of Kadena? He sighed again over his cursed fate. If he were cool, he'd be the classic protagonist, and Tina the heroine. So why did he have to end up with such a useless power? The young lady begged the hero to stop staring so closely, and embarrassment seared him. She declared that this entire crowd had crammed in to win the right to inherit the exact past she carries. You can't see a thing from here, and they even have an area called Zastenye. Kanata admitted he didn't quite get it, and Tina snapped that they were temporary workers. Many came to the city to work, and then headed back to the wall, so most of the people in that line were from there. That district stretched beyond the city's southern wall. Its people had none of Kadena's citizen rights, and the hero snapped, "So it's essentially a whole different city?" That Kadena towered huge. Narrow streets, strange signs, and endless turns made his head reel, and Canada worried about only one thing, that he wouldn't get lost here. Then Tina grabbed his hand. She led him to her home, each step soaked in the ache of missing her loved ones, and Kanata shadowed her in silence, drinking in how the thought of family softened her eyes and lit a fierce, gentle smile. She beamed and said she wanted to introduce him to her father immediately. The hero stared at their entwined palms, as if sensing how rapidly everything was shifting. After darting through a maze of narrow, jam-packed streets, arm in arm with his sweetheart, Kanata arrived at the designated spot and gasped. A colossal building loomed before him. Could this really be her home? Was she truly a noblewoman whose hand the hero was never meant to touch? Kanata felt the title ignite a tale. A bride from another world for the hero. Whether he liked it or not, his hunch slammed into reality. The little girl really was the daughter of a rich man, and she couldn't see why anyone would find that strange. His stomach dropped as he prayed he wouldn't be reprimanded for every move he'd made toward the girl, none of them special. When a man suddenly stepped out toward them, Tina hurled herself into his arms, wrapping Adonis in a fierce hug as he choked out that he'd thought he was going to die when he heard about the attack. Relief hit him like a thunderclap. He roared with joy that the girl and her companion were still alive. She flung out an apology for making him worry, even though the chaos wasn't her doing. Saying sorry, deserved or not, was her instinct. Arnawesh then swept in and introduced her savior to the man. He bowed, declared he was the Arnawesh family's butler, and, voice trembling, thanked him from the bottom of his heart for saving Lady Tina. Kanata waved it off, saying it wasn't worth it. Someone's voice tore through the air, calling to the girl. Kanata's breath caught as the girl's words revealed the truth. That towering man was her father, joy blazing across his face as he reached out a huge hand toward her. Kanata watched, joy exploding in his chest. Tina had made it out alive and was back in her father's arms, and he beamed, proud he'd made it happen. Out of nowhere, Tina's father slammed his hand into her. But why? He stormed at her, accusing her of returning without the cargo and bleeding the family's assets dry, branding her a useless girl, and snarling she wouldn't be allowed home until she repaid every loss and lost profit. Rage erupted in Kanata at the adult's behavior. He lunged to right the wrong, but the butler yanked him back, warning it was a family matter he shouldn't meddle in. He cut him off, refusing to listen. If he couldn't land a blow on that bloated idiot of a father, he'd unleash a few cutting words for hurting a defenseless girl and dare him to try it again. He even spat ragamuffin at Kanata as Tina slumped on the cold road, clutching the burning cheek where the blow had landed. Her normally clear voice cracked and pitiful as she cried out to Kanata for help, sobbing bitterly. He shoved it in the fat bastard's face. Tina was his daughter. She'd barely clawed back from death, and he had the nerve to call himself a father. Every word he spat dripped with contempt, if you could even call him that. Tension crackled as he dug in his heels and refused to yield, convinced the young man was pushing his luck and had forgotten the city's rules, while Tina sank to her knees, begging him to stop. He threw his life on the line to protect her. Someday he could rise to save not just the kingdom of Grand Isle, but the entire world. She dropped a bombshell. Mr. Kanata wasn't just anyone. He was a hero from another world. The insolent man sneered. Of all those summoned, he alone had been cast out and branded a nobody, living proof he was the most useless, utterly worthless one. Kanata ground his teeth, begging the truth to come out face to face instead of like this, sick with the thought of failing and being shamed before her family. How could she ever look at him the same after those words? The father barked on. That's the very scoundrel who committed those horrific crimes. He couldn't possibly know all those offenses were invented to discredit Kanata. He snarled that even talking to that non-entity tarnished the Arnawish name, jabbed a finger and drove him off. Tina watched with a sinking heart. She shot to her feet, voice blazing as she proclaimed for all to hear that Kanata was her hero, and nobody dared speak to him that way. Tears glinting in her eyes while the boy stood frozen, not knowing what to do. No one would believe him anyway. Her father cut her off, snatched her hand, and barked that since she'd come home alive, she had to get straight back to work. There was no time to stand around and chat. Tina didn't want that. She sobbed and cried out to Mr. Kanata for help. He could only reach out his hand, her voice so raw with helplessness it made his heart ache. The hero steps into the Zastanya area and freezes. He hadn't expected this compared to the other districts. It's a battered ghetto, more like a slum. The man issues a raw, heartfelt apology for his brother's harsh words, while Kanata is convinced he should be the one apologizing. He couldn't barge into Tina's family affairs. He was already certain their relationship was a ticking clock, bound to end. Even if the guy had ripped the girl away by force, he'd have only unleashed a storm of new problems. Fists clenched, he corrals his scattered thoughts, murmurs a humble apology for his audacity, and asks the man for permission to pose a question. The man nods and grants it. Canada's fired up to open his own business in the city, and is on the hunt for the perfect spot to set up shop. He snarled that without citizenship the walls shut down all trade. You can't buy or sell a thing inside. He throws him a daring alternative. Pull it off on the carry wall. Adonis declares the area flings its gates wide. Anyone can move in and trade there for free. They aren't kicked out. Newcomers are shoved to the outer edge, pushed away from the wall into the deadliest zone, forced to become a living wall of people against constant attacks. He's standing in a vacant clearing, utterly exposed and defenseless, desperately hoping no trouble shows up. Kanata unleashed a long, shuddering exhale. His new life in another world erupts, and he steels himself to face every challenge head-on. Heads snap toward him, stunned, as his thunderous shout tore through the air. Near the store, Kanata bellows for a crew to storm an otherworldly emporium overflowing with the rarest treasures. People flood into the store, mouths hanging open. They've never seen anything like it, and memories of the people of Grandale crash over him. He'd shunned the locals before, but now his territory's exploded, and hungry to run this business, he'll have everything turning around in a heartbeat. A breathtaking girl strides up to the hero and, eyes blazing with curiosity, asks, "What's a store?" Kanata beams, declaring the shop sells rare products and otherworldly goods, then beckons them forward with a grin. Don't be shy. The city freezes in shock, but people flood the shops and start snatching up whatever they can. The very first customer bought a sandwich. Kanata closed his eyes at the first bite, savoring it, and vowed to make such a killer impression that people would come back again and again. Silence slammed between them, awkward and suffocating. Kanata's brain betrayed him. He never set the product's price. Dread slammed into him. Back in Grandale, he never had to spend a coin. The crown sent a royal allowance and he never even went shopping or parted with a single piece of money. Money's value eludes him, so the boy frantically scrambles for coin names, though he can only name 4. Cheeks burning, the young man scrambles to untangle the mess and set everything right. He slams a single bronze coin down as the price, and the visitors freeze, swallowed by stunned silence. They stampede to the checkout to snatch bargain-priced goods, and the chaos floods the main character with terror. As evening fell, the store slammed its doors shut. Canada slumped at work, bone-deep exhaustion draining every limb. Chaos swallowed his day, then a kind woman patiently decoded the local exchange rate for him. 1 bronze coin, and you could empty the shelves. If a shop like that existed in his world, Kanata would storm it every day. He flashes back to crowds beaming as they snatched up everything around them. And now shame hits him as he finally sees how reckless he'd been. Regret slams into him. If he'd known, he'd have pulled Tina aside and pressed her for every detail about the local currency. Her memory claws at him. He worries for her, wonders how she's doing, and fears she might be disappointed in him. Kanata's heart ached. He burned to see her. A month after the store opened, he'd ripped through the local language and steeled himself to the shop's punishing grind. He slapped price tags on the goods and slammed down a hard cap. 5 items per person. They built a toilet just for visitors, a guest-only throne off-limits to everyone else. He carved out strict hours and even snuck in 2 30-minute restock breaks. The glowing 24 on the storefront is a brazen lie, and he prays the locals can't read numbers. The store has only 1 cash register. Kanata still greedily shoulders the whole operation, and the locals have begun to rally, tending the place and backing it with real support. Already, the hero feels himself becoming part of this place. It's starting to feel like home. He's convinced he's finally found his purpose in this world, the thing he's chased his whole life. A man raps sharply on the guy's door, snapping his attention straight to the doorway. Kanata throws the door wide, letting Zareel storm in to claim the goods. The guy thrusts a bag stuffed with yesterday's proceeds into his hands, and the man erupts in praise for his razor-sharp trading skills. Zareel flashes a sly grin and teases Kanata that he's green with envy. The man who looked suspicious? He's actually a merchant from the West. About a week ago, just after the store opened, they collided, eyes locking as if fate had timed it. He was about to take a breather when a stranger's voice sliced through the quiet, and a cold knot tightened in his gut. A grin split the merchant's face as he peered through the doorway and tossed out a tantalizing proposal. A surge of fear ripped through Kanata the moment the man's suspicious gaze landed on him. Rill pressed the shopkeeper, demanding to know how he exchanged his earnings, and the man stared blankly. He didn't even know what exchange meant. The merchant crowed that every one of the man's goods sold for a single bronze coin, and day after day he stacked up thousands, sometimes tens of thousands. So the merchant was certain the man must be drowning in coin with nowhere to store it, and the hero's mind began to race. Zareel's grin sharpens. He'll swap your bronze for glinting gold coins, but he demands his cut. He demanded a 0.5% cut for his service, and swore to the guy it was a steal. Suspicion coiled in him, but the sheer heap of coins in the shop made him seriously weigh the merchant's offer. That's when their collaboration ignited. At the very start of their business relationship, unease gnawed at him. He couldn't tell if the man was honest or a fraud, but he kept cooperating and trading coins. The guys still team up while the merchant grins and jokes that locals call Kanata the area's deity. And Kanata flushes, pleading for them to stop the nicknames. Doubt gnaws at Kanata. Could their world truly have only one goddess, Astia? Zareel declares the title deity belongs to her. And that bombshell rewrites the world. Not just Grandale, but every government is ruled by women, and every great figure is a woman. Zareel declared, anyone whose deeds mirror a saint is revered as the living incarnation of the goddess Astia, Nahak, and the man, though he agrees, still can't shake how strange it feels. He's still reeling. His very existence is a miracle, and whether he's a man or a woman changes nothing. The merchant scoffs, baffled that Grandale could banish a hero with such breathtaking powers, and calls the townsfolk fools. Kanata reels at how lightning fast the rumors spread, and admits he tried to negotiate with them. But the talks fell apart. Tamaki's face slams into his memory, and he can't stop imagining who she's become. He leans forward and demands, for real, how are things in Grando now? The merchant replies that, aside from the news of his exile, it's common knowledge the other kingdoms actively back the heroes, while Grandale alone flatly bars the heroes from leaving the country. Zareel's eyes narrow as he questions whether the hero could actually care about what's happening in the city, and the hero's eager nod shatters that doubt. Even though some so-called heroes are rotten, his friends still stand by him, Worry claws at him, and he burns to know how they're doing now. The merchant shot a sly wink at Kanata and vowed to send his men to investigate. If a hero asked, he'd pull every string. And the boy, cheeks burning, thanked him. Lost in thought, the young man stares at Surreal and fires. "Why do you treat me so well when you get nothing from it?" Surreal reels, baffled. He can't fathom what the young man means. He proclaims Kanata the greatest hero of the last few hundred years. The guy reels, utterly stunned. The merchant steels himself and lays it out bluntly. Nobody really wants the heroes to defeat the Dark Lord, and the blow of that truth leaves Kanata stunned. The war around him fuels a vast economic machine. If the Dark Lord vanishes, the nations that trade resources for battles and mercenaries see their revenues evaporate, plunging the world into crisis and hurling millions into poverty. That toll would dwarf the people slain by monsters. The hero's suspicion snapped into place. Grandale was stonewalling other countries' requests to cling to its leadership. Zora swears the world food crisis will vanish in a heartbeat the moment that guy steps onto the scene. He conjures endless resources from pure nothingness. That's why the merchant proclaims Kana is Astya herself reborn. In a heartbeat, the hero's features snapped into a new expression. He pressed the merchant again, demanding why he was so sure the man could conjure endless goods, and he couldn't fathom how Zero learned it. Only Tina knew the store's system. He swears he's telling the truth. He visits that store constantly, put his people on round-the-clock watch, and in all those watches never once saw anyone deliver goods. The store building literally materialized out of nowhere, Zarl explains, and Kanata's stomach drops. He knows he screwed up. The merchant grinned and announced he'd just realized every good would be made right there inside. The other guy's jaw dropped. He'd always thought himself clever, but not that clever, so he decided they'd better not become enemies. The hero implored Zaril to bury his commercial secret, and Zaril met his gaze and swore he'd never pry. He regards the man as a priceless ally, far more important than any monster slayer, and wants their peaceful bond to continue. Kanata feels the same, treasuring his partner. Zero burst from the shop, vowing he'd hunt down every scrap of news on Grandale today and lay it all out later. They bellow one last thunderous goodbye to each other. Kanata sits at the computer, fingers flying as he hammers out words. A sudden blast of noise rips his focus away. A sudden racket on the street behind the emergency exit makes him freeze. He's a coiled spring of tension, certain the locals couldn't possibly know about this exit, and his mind races through every catastrophic outcome. Panic tightened his chest. What if a mercenary sent by Tina's father had come for him? A voice sliced through the silence from behind the door. He dials Mr. Kanata and flat out says he knows him personally. The hero freezes, disbelief written across his face. He flings the door open and all doubt collapses. He recognizes that voice. Tina catapults into the boy's arms, joy exploding. She's finally seeing Mr. Kanata, the one she'd been desperate to meet. They crash into each other's arms, laughter and tears exploding. Because they missed each other, life rushes back and fills them. The girl stands rooted in the passageway, refusing to leave the Canada side. He reels as the truth hits. She has feelings for him. He remembers Mimi, his cat, gripping him tight and refusing to let go. Heat flared across his cheeks as the hug dragged on. He squirmed and scrambled for any excuse to break free. He shoves Tina away. She snaps free. Kanata beams at meeting him, immediately beckons the girl to come inside right away, and she lights up and happily agrees. He demanded of the girl, "How did you track me down in a city this massive?" Adonis told her the guy had slipped beyond the walls, and word of the thriving shop had already raced through town, so she understood in a heartbeat. She'd wanted to get to him sooner, but her family had forbidden her to leave the house. Kanata's heart hammered as he confessed he needed to apologize for hiding from the girl that Grandale expelled him. Tina locked eyes with him, a quiet understanding softening her expression. She declared he had absolutely nothing to apologize for, and he froze, stunned and dazed like the world had hit pause. She reveres Parni as a legendary hero and reels that Grandale dared to exile him. Now the people of Grandale must be drowning in bitter regret. Turns out Tina had been watching the store since noon, and Canada's jaw hit the floor. She hadn't even told him. She watches crowds pour into his shop and spill back out grinning, and can't help but wonder, isn't that exactly what every true hero wants to achieve? Kanata fires back, insisting his shop only hawks cheap goods, and that alone doesn't make him useful to anyone. Tina snaps back, insisting it's not true. She trusts him with every beat of her heart and swears it's only because of him that this is possible. Tina swears his ability eclipses every other. Kanata's mind snaps to Zaril's words. He, like the girl, said the very same thing. The girl is a merchant's daughter, and she wields a razor-sharp eye for trade. Red blooms across his cheeks as a guilty, giddy grin splits his face. Tina grabs his hands for support and declares he's a true, breathtaking hero. She reminds him he once saved her life and hails him as the coolest hero in the world, and he crumples into embarrassed silence under that tidal wave of praise. She fires a bold accusation. He thinks he's useless because he can't stand up to monsters. She scoffs, declaring it utter nonsense. He can't fight, but inside him blazes infinite potential to save countless lives, and Tina tells him to stand proud of that power. Gratitude surges through Kanata as he thanks her, and her words lift the crushing weight from his soul. She grabs his hand, locks eyes with him, and vows that no matter how fate twists, she'll always be there for him. Out of nowhere, she lunges forward and captures his lips with a kiss, leaving him frozen, shock and confusion tearing through him. He freezes, disbelief roaring through him as the scene unfolds. Kanata shoves the stunned girl away, panic flaring as he realizes he's not ready for the relationship to escalate like this. Blood flooding his face, he chokes out, "No!" Tina flinches, her eyes widening in fear. He bolts upright, jittery and fussing, snapping that the break's over. "Open the shop now. The customers are already fed up with waiting." Tina scoffed that it sounded fake, and Kanata fumbled through a flurry of confused excuses. About 2 months have passed since Tina returned. Kanata's shop is on fire. Customers keep pouring in, and Tina jumps in to give the guy a little extra help behind the counter. The girl beams and announces the customer rush has ebbed and the hero can rest. He exhales, thanks her, then hoists the boxes and strides away. He opts for a quick rest, warning Tina to call the moment trouble shows up. She flashes a confident smile and tells him to leave everything to her. Night falls, the shop locks up, and Tina spins to face Mr. Kanata. She asks permission to help the guy in the store, and he freezes, every muscle snapping tight. She'd already told her father she's starting an apprenticeship, so she may be staying here for a long time. The idea that Tina might live with him hits the guy like a thunderbolt. Her joy explodes. They can live together at last, and he finally grasps the blow that has befallen him. Tina vows she'll give her all and asks him to rely on her. Kanata is mesmerized by her smile and knows she's the one he wants to protect. Awe hits him. Maybe the girl is even better than he imagined, and he wonders if every merchant, Caden, and Zareel among them can really be this kind. While Tina watches the guy with sharp interest, he agrees to take her on as his assistant. Her deep knowledge and the trust she's earned steady his nerves, so he tells her she can count on him too. Tina beams and thanks the guy, bragging she knows everything about him so he can relax. But Kanata cuts in, snapping he meant himself, not the store. He cuts in, pressing, "What did you mean when you said you know everything?" And Tina smiles. "Sometimes he calls me Tenochka," which sounds impossibly cute when he points out the mole on my back and those little details. Shock sent him crashing to his knees as he begged her to forgive him, and she just blinked, puzzled, asking him not to apologize. The store still pulls in massive crowds. Fans swarm in and the place hums with electric energy. Tina orchestrates everything flawlessly, so Kanata devours his meal and drifts into a peaceful, well-earned rest. Loneliness evaporated from his world. His life blossomed into richness, and he stood calm, overflowing with happiness. In the evening he turned to Tina and insisted, "It's late. Time for you to rest." She refuses to rest. Planted at the computer, she tells the guy to rest while she races to punch today's earnings into the computer. The guy forces an awkward smile. Almost nothing surprises him anymore. Only Tina's competence still leaves him speechless. He's convinced that if she had internet access, she'd probably instantly crack the code and catapult their store across websites and ads. A little while later, she wraps up her work, locks eyes with him, snuffs the light, and glides toward his bed. She drops onto his bed, eyes riveted on the sleeping guy. He snapped awake, terror like ice in his veins, and shoved the girl off the bed. Tina clicks her tongue and hisses under her breath that today is another failure. Kanata watches her every twitch with an unblinking, searching stare. Tina slips into bed and wishes him goodnight, while he buries his face in his hands, tormented by the thought that if he crosses that line, there'll be no turning back, and resisting temptation is slipping away. He shoots back a goodnight, and she drifts off fierce and certain she won't quit. She'll try again tomorrow. Their days replayed like a loop. He ran the shop by day, and every night he traded blows with Tina. One day a sudden chime ripped the silence, and he felt his level surge. Shock slammed him. He had no clue what he'd just done. It hit Kanata that only he could hear the level rising, so he darted off without a second thought, yelling over his shoulder to Tina that he'd be in his office for a while. Confusion hit him hard. He hadn't fought or even defended himself, but he still ripped open his status to hunt for a system error. He rocketed his level up after discovering you could raise it without fighting anyone, just by managing the store, which is way cooler. He scored new goods, installed a defense system with a recon drone, and grabbed even more upgrades. New icons blinked onto his desktop. Kanata leaned in to study them, thinking the store might have released devices made for this world. Their purpose was inscrutable at a glance, and he dared not activate them on a whim. He stumbles on a reconnaissance drone and freezes, his gut screaming that it's not safe. Clinging to the hope it won't harm anyone, he grits his teeth and tries to launch it. Kanata's eyes lock on the camera feed as a drone rockets up, seeming to take off directly from the store's roof. The drone blasted off, rocketing so high it left him wide-eyed. He beamed at the new device, then gaped when the drone locked onto a person sleeping on the roof of his store. He looks up and freezes. A stranger is sprawled asleep on the roof, and shock hits him like a punch to the chest. He zooms into the photo, bewilderment knotting his gut as he frantically studies the motionless body lying there. He bolts across the yard, clambers onto the roof, and peers down, desperate to figure out what the one who should be in Grandale is doing here. Kanata vaulted onto the roof, fury crackling as he bellowed at the girl. She shuddered, confused and staggered by the sharp screen. He locks eyes and recognition slams into him. It's Tamaki, and she greets him. The clumsy girl tries to speak, missteps, and hurtles headfirst onto the hard floor, her face slamming into it. Tamaki lashes out, screaming at him that if bruises bloom on her delicate skin it's his fault, and Kanata turns to the girl and asks, "Why are you here?" She barrels toward him, breathless and fierce, shouting, "I came for you!" Kanata's jaw dropped as the girl's words twisted his thoughts into knots. Zeril storms over to another merchant, fires the question, and the man nods hard. The report is true. A jittery man lifts his chin and stares up into the night sky, pulse hammering with each shaky breath. An ear-splitting roar rips out of the mountains. A gargantuan monster bursts out of there and hisses, its sibilant breath slicing through the air. Kanata snaps the question at the girl. "How did you get here?" And Tamaki says her level skyrocketed during the hero training. She unlocked search and track powers, then tore out of the city and raced straight here. He gaped. She'd ripped through that death-haunted forest, dodging monsters lurking in every shadow. Tamaki triggered her assassin ability Stealth and melted into the shadows, unseen. Her power erased her presence, letting her vanish even with monsters hot on her heels. The guy's mind races. She exploded into hysteria. She'd been sure he'd gaze at her with admiration and surprise, but he stood motionless, envy burning at her two strange abilities, while his lone gift was conjuring new kinds of onigiri. Kanata shrugs it off. "Not important," he says. His attention already snapped to something entirely different. Tamaki stammers, cheeks burning, and finally admits she bolted from the training program. She snarls that the program keeps getting brutal, and she's completely stopped keeping up, and he freezes, eyes wide, firing back. "Are you sure that's enough to defeat the Dark Lord of Demons?" She didn't flinch. She was nearly certain Kurimochi-kun had already assembled the elite squad with himself at the helm, and they'd steamroll the competition without her. Kanata presses, asking how the others are doing and whether the girl is all right. She nods, trembling, and offers a hesitant yes. She says everyone on third team was worried sick about him. The store within walking distance pulled many to safety, and now that he's gone, some have shut themselves away like hermits. Karamochi peddled his story like gospel, insisting the boy got expelled for his own mistakes. He snapped that the first team never accepted him, but Kanata's best friend couldn't stop worry from gnawing at him. She jabbed, "Do you remember Asagiri Reku?" He could only summon a few faded, scattered memories of her. Tamaki told him she vanished just as the guy slipped out of town. Minazuki-san suddenly ran into her at the gate. She snapped at him. Because Aki knew Kun, the person she'd been watching, was finally expelled. She decided she had nothing left to do in this city. She swore she'd roam free from now on, begged Nazuki-kun to watch over her, and wished him well. Shock ripped through him when he realized Tamaki had been watching him the whole time. He demanded why. She admitted she didn't know, then asked if she could have chased him, and he snapped that he never even saw her. The guy asks if a Sagari from the 13 can really win alone, and Tamaki snaps that Riki-chan commands the ability Poem. She hasn't the faintest clue what her ability even is. Kanata's pulse spikes. Could the girl switch on that search and track ability and zero in on her? She flings her hands into the air. Without the seer she hunted, nothing will hold together, and she snatches everything and storms off. He zeroes in on a reputable merchant, hunting for any scrap of intel on Asagiri, and the girl throws a grateful thank you at Kanata. Relief surges through her. He's so worried about Reika-chan, so she thanks him again. He treated it like plain common sense. His one burning hope was that every classmate would survive so they could all return to their home world together. Joy flares in her eyes as she shoots him a knowing smile. She's determined. Every single one of them has to come back safe and sound. He snaps to it. Her search and track skill lies dormant without a goal, so he offers to give her one. She flailed her hands and squealed in mortification, cheeks blazing, leaving him standing there utterly perplexed. Tamaki's bag already hid the guy's tiny kitten keychain. A rush of relief surged through her when he didn't notice. She clutches her keychain like it's the only thing keeping her steady. Kanata doesn't even look her way. Tina crashed into the room, breath ragged, and cut straight to it. Their sandwiches were almost gone. Her eyes snap to Tamaki and, dazed, she blurts a frantic apology for barging in. Tamaki lets out a sharp, stunned scream. She snaps, impatience crackling. "Who's the cute girl sitting next to me?" And the slightly lost guy's face goes blank before memory clicks. He remembers this is their first meeting. Kanata jabbed a finger at her and announced she's his hired employee. By day they run the shop together. By night they share a house and watch each other's backs. She smiles, introduces herself as Tina, and admits she's a little clumsy. Tamaki explodes into a scream of pure delight, the sound bursting through the air like fireworks. She dismissed Tina as merely an employee, blind to the fact the guy might be scrambling under a crushing labor shortage. She lets out a raw scream and, breathless, offers to hire her too. Tina crashes into the conversation and apologizes for even talking about it. Ever since she started, the shortage of hands melted away. She's convinced 2 people are more than enough. She spins to Kanata, hungry for his approval. He blinks in surprise, then confesses that, thanks to Tina, everything's suddenly so much easier. Labor's still running dry. Those words hit hard. Tina's face crumples with sorrow while Tamaki bursts into a triumphant grin. Tina buries her face in her palms, crushed by disappointment, as a guy rushes in to soothe her, conceding Tamaki can be loud, selfish, and as sloppy as an old man. But not that bad. A jolt of memory hits him, and he blurts out to Tamaki that his store's level has skyrocketed. They usher her into the store, and she gapes at the dizzying array of items lining every shelf. Tamaki beamed at the feast of sandwiches, rice balls, and drinks, plus a glorious spread of sweets, pudding and melon bread among them, while Kanata puffed up with pride, bragging he once had only 3 items. The girl declares she wants to live here for the rest of her life. She hurtles into the guy's friendly embrace, breathlessly declaring he's the best. She sprints through the store, marveling at every product and already hunting the perfect Coke to pair with French fries, while Canada watches from the aisle, smirking. She beams, eager to try anything, and springs into the air, clutching a heaping armful of food. Tina smothers a laugh into her palm, tells the guy Tamaki-san's an absolute riot, and Kanata nods with a grin. Even with her eccentric quirks, she fiercely watches over her classmates, him included. He aches for the girl to get along with her too. Tina flashes an apologetic smile, owns up to Kanata for snapping at his best friend, and declares she's honored to meet heroes from another world. With a mouthful, Tamaki vows she'll throw herself into work starting tomorrow so they can count on her. Morning broke the next day. Tamaki erupts into a ragged howl and pleads for a break, while Kanata stares, stunned at how fast the girl ran out of steam. The place is deserted, no visitors. So they all snap to the same decision and call a break. The guy stared, unsettled. There were way fewer customers today than usual. Tina reached to close the door and froze when a customer stood waiting outside. Kanata's jaw dropped. Soshi Melty, the district head, was already waiting right outside the door. Everyone calls her the district chief, but outside these streets no official borders exist. An elder who corrals residents into every meeting, she runs the neighborhood gatherings, and she proclaims she can't get enough of these French fries. Soshi's gentle, friendly spirit has the whole town adoring her. Beyond the wall they crown her district head and call her their mother. She thanks the heroes for their hospitality, and Kanata, voice thick with gratitude, thanks her for accepting him as a newcomer. She insists Kanata has become the area's linchpin. Everyone there should be grateful to him. She stepped forward, locked him with a hard stare, and asked him to introduce her to his employees. Tamaki thrusts out his hand and declares he's a hero from another world, just like Kanata, grinning as he says he's glad to meet her. She beams and declares they're honored to have 2 heroes in the outer wall area. Tina rushes up, gratitude blazing in her eyes, and thanks the woman for watching over them. Kanata can't read Tina's face, and, unsure if she's bothered by being from the city center, blurts out that the girl looks like an angel. For ages, people had been telling her a sweet young woman worked here, and the moment she finally spotted her, joy exploded. She'd finally met the one everyone kept praising. Tears of joy streak the girl's cheeks as she thanks Soshi, and Soshi beams back, just as thrilled to meet her. Kanata bursts into a grin, ecstatic that Sochi and Tina have become friends. He shot a quick thanks at the district head for showing up today. But suspicion flared. Was she here on official business? She plants a hand over her heart and declares she came here to tell him something important. She drops to her knees, voice raw and shaking. I'm so sorry, but Rage crackled in her voice as she ordered him out. "Leave this store and this place now!" Zareel materialized out of nowhere and threw his full support behind the woman's words. Everyone recoiled at the merchant's sudden arrival, and Kanata snapped, "When did he even get here?" He says they were so swallowed by their conversation they never noticed him. So he slipped through the door like a shadow. He showered Tina and the leader with compliments, then his eyes locked on Tamaki. And before he realized it, the number of beautiful, charming flowers had swelled. She whips around to Zareel, breathless. "You showed up just in time. I was talking with Akinosen." And the merchant quickly apologizes, urging her to carry on. She snaps, slicing through confusion, and insists this is above all to shield Akina-san and the store. He locks eyes with her, confusion crackling as he parrots her words back. She leans in, voice low. "This region's been home to an ancient earth dragon since before the demon lord spawned his monsters. It nests in the mountains and slumbers. But every 4 years it claws its way down to hunt." Kanata's scream tore out of him as he demanded why he'd only been told about this a couple of months after arriving in the outer environment area. Zareel scratched his head guiltily. He'd assumed Kanata already knew. He reveals the city's towering wall was built to hold back the ferocious earth dragon. And the boy, piecing it together, realizes the order forcing newcomers to live outside is a desperate precaution against that same beast. Kanata's pulse rockets. If the earth dragon KDS attacks, what will the people behind the wall do? He can't settle for just surviving. Cyril's voice tightens as he explains. "Most people have been evacuated for now, but some are crushed by poverty and illness. Trapped and unable to flee, they become victims." Kanata staggers, baffled. How can the people in the city be powerless to help them? There are probably several knights inside those walls and enough guards on the ramparts. If they know exactly when he'll strike, can't they at least shove everyone behind the walls and slam the gates until the attack passes? Tina admits it, regret thick in her voice. The city district gates slam shut and everyone scrambles to shore up defenses, leaving no time to save the residents of the outer zone. Kanata stares, pulse racing, wondering what this all means. Tina's voice broke as she spread a rumor. After the last Kattas tore through, the outer district lay half ruined. The residents had survived, but the incident's details vanished from her memory. She whispers, "I'm so sorry," and Kanata covers her hands with his palm. Tina and Kanata lock eyes. One loaded glance and the conversation snaps right back to the original topic. She nods, sorrow thick in her voice, and reports they've received word that Kattas has awakened and is already bearing down on them. Under Zareel's command, his subordinates have begun evacuating everyone outside the outer wall. A bolt of realization struck Kanata. She finally knew why so few people were here today. The chief booms that Kattas could strike the area tonight and apologizes for springing this on everyone. They'd crawled through grinding poverty for years, but when the hero opened a nearby shop, life lifted. Standards rose, smiles returned, and a grateful woman ran up to thank him for a store within walking distance. Zareel bellows that everyone is rooting for the heroes to come back safe. Once Katie slipped away and they came back here, the merchant snapped his thought closed. Tamaki whips around to face Kanata. He pleads with her not to make that face and would love to promise it. But the opponent standing before them is the game's main monster. The city's faces slammed into him. The hero clenched his jaw and chose his path. Tina clasps Kanata's hand, her grip a steady lifeline. He snaps his head toward Tina, who sits right beside him. They lock eyes and Kanata snaps a resolute nod. Beaming, he proclaims to everyone that he's decided everything. Zareel's face lights up with joy. Zareel barks he'll order his subordinates to rush them to safety immediately. Because if they go, Kanata cuts him off, chest thrust out, loudly declares he's the convenience store hero and vows to crush this earth dragon. His words slammed into the room, sending everyone reeling in terror. Tina alone didn't flinch. Tamaki rips the boys' heroic lines from their mouths and roars them back, vowing to be a hero and slay Cadiz. They roared at the hero, making it brutally clear his words couldn't touch them. Kanata clutched the chairs back like a lifeline, stunned. He hadn't expected that outcry over his words. He shrugs off the protests and hounds the man for every stubborn detail of Cadiz's appearance and habits. The merchant presses a palm to his forehead, incredulous that anyone would claim they could slay the dragon while knowing nothing about it. He still insists it's a muscle-bound beast of a dragon that shrugs off magic and sword strikes, so they christened it Cadiz as a warning. Armored in a shell and thick scales that leave even the military baffled. The guy's blood runs cold as he realizes this dragon is a nightmare. Its defenses cover every angle, and he scrambles for a plan. Panic clamps Tamaki. They're supposed to be heroes, but she can't shake the sick certainty they can't do a thing. And Tina snaps, "Does the guy have a plan?" The young man has already hatched a bold plan, but he hasn't dared test it yet. so its success hangs in the balance. Kanata burns to thank the people of the outer wall area for giving him a place he can finally call home. But he'll need your help to make it happen. Knowing the risks, the hero steels himself, turns to the room, and calls on everyone there to lend him a helping hand. Tina lunges to his side, vowing she'll always champion the interests of those she protects, and declaring she believes in him. She beams she'll be happy to help Kanata, and they both freeze into an awkward fumbling glance. Tamaki's scream rips the air as she rushes to his side to help, faith in him blazing and her promise to protect him driving every move. She snaps that she's been Kanata's friend forever, so she can't walk away now. She rips a call for help through the chaos. No flashy powers like theirs, but steady hands poised to patch up the wounded. Kanata beams with genuine joy and thanks everyone from the bottom of his heart. Tension coiled in Zaril. He froze, heart pounding, utterly at a loss for what to do. Fear claws at him. Everything could implode because of them. But Kanata laughs and says if the merchant backs them, the guy will back him too. Ziriel keeps pressing the man to spill the secret plan to annihilate Cadiz. Night crashes down. Every preparation for the meeting with the dragon is finished. Now the only thing left is to ignite each lantern, one by one. He bellowed a thunderous thanks and urged anyone done with their work to evacuate. The people below accepted the call and moved out. The hero drops his gaze to the ground, a storm of thoughts raging in his head. Assigned to the drone, Tamaki leaned in with fingers poised and eyes fixed, waiting for the store's command to take control. Allies poured in and they hammered every detail into place. Now everything is ready. Now everything hangs on one battle. Can the hero slay the dragon? He's held his ground until now, but this time he must face a titanic dragon. Up close, doubt claws at him. If he can't fell it, everyone will be doomed. Tina edges up to the taut, tight-jawed guy and softly asks, "Everything okay?" Kanata blurts to her, voice cracking, that he's actually terrified right now. Tina roars her support. With her at his side, he'll inevitably win. Kanata, flushed by that bold faith, aches to have that same unwavering confidence. Tina steels herself and hurls the magic words at Kanata. His eyes snap wide in stunned disbelief. She tells him that even if he falters and the whole world turns on and rejects the hero, she's always by his side, so he can charge headfirst into failure without fear. She doesn't care if he's kind, brave, or the most cowardly. She'll accept Kanata and protect him with fierce devotion. And he stares at Tina, stunned. She flashes a shy smile and asks, "Did my words bring you relief?" Her words struck like lightning, igniting fierce confidence in him, and he tells her, breathless, that it really was magic. Tina beams at the guy, happiness pouring out in a bright, contagious smile. A distant roar explodes, cutting them off as terrified screams from the crowd rip through the air. Cadiz burst into the mountains and planted himself among the jagged peaks. The heroes reel back, jaws dropping, as a colossal earth dragon looms before them. Kanata roared at Tamaki to fire up the drone and seize control of the dragon's flight. She snaps into action, lunging at the computer as her fingers blur in a rapid staccato of clicks. The drone rockets straight at the dragon, and Kanata's tension spikes. Cadiz is colossal, far bigger than he'd ever imagined. Tamaki bursts from the hatch, beaming, proclaiming the dragon chased the drone, and she's already angling for applause. She throws herself into the challenge, accepting it even as the dragon towers over them and her knees quake, while Tina wraps an arm around her and soothes her with a steady promise that everything will be fine. He stammers a hesitant reply, likely sending a cold jolt of fear through Tamaki. Kanata stares at the magazine, barely smaller than the giant monster, and clings to the desperate hope it can take the hit. The dragon hurtles toward the store. The heroes cling to the rope as Kanata roars for everyone to brace for impact. Cadiz barrels into a building. A dull thud booms as the guys clamp onto the magazine, clutching it with every ounce of strength. Kanata snaps to his feet and checks everyone. They're alive. They've survived this stage, but the end is far off. They snatch fire extinguishers and surge onward. The three heroes steel themselves, resolve blazing in their veins. They charge the dragon, fire extinguishers clenched in their hands. He roared, "Aim dead center!" The dragon's gaze snaps to the heroes, and terror rips through them. The dragon clamps a rock-hard shell over its eyes, straining to protect them. Yet beneath that armor everything is soft and vulnerable. The boy zeroes in on Cadiz's eyes and mouth, taunting you to do the same. The girl trembles, desperate to run back to her parents, but she steels herself and charges into battle. He planted the shop as bait to lure Cadiz away. The building set up like a last-ditch shield to blunt the onslaught and spare the city from damage, so they could force Cadiz to retreat and strike back. Kanata relentlessly hurls fire extinguishers, each crushing blow battering the dragon until it falters. He jams a fire extinguisher into his mouth, and Tamaki flips out, seized by pure terror. The dragon refuses to back down, and panic slams into the guy. Desperate to wrench the monster away from the store even for a single second, He spins to the girl for a working fire extinguisher, but she's not in her place. He frantically scans for the girl, confusion clouding his eyes, and all he finds is Tina standing nearby. He demands to know where Tamaki is. Then his eyes snap to the building's shattered side. A cold panic seizes Kanata at the mere thought of the girl plummeting. The dragon roars, hurling every fire extinguisher straight at the hero. Fear claws his throat as he screams Tamaki's name. A creature explodes into view and lunges, leaving the dark-haired guy frozen in shock. A spear screams into the creature's skull, impaling it, and the main character gapes, unable to tell who did it. A taunting voice sneers behind him. I did it. And when he spins, he knows it's Tamaki. Only she's nowhere to be found. The girl spits out that she slipped in with assassin stealth and gouged the Earth Dragon's eyes out with her spear. The boy realizes her ability hides her from his sight, but swallows his worry and doesn't tell her she scared him. The girl behind him exhales, glad Tamaki's safe. Tamaki of the Void smirks and declares she's one of the heroes. It was child's play. The protagonist heaps praise. Then the girl who'd been standing behind him steps forward and announces she's actually here. 2 cylinders wedged in the dragon's jaws splinter under his crushing bite as a feral growl rips from his throat. He spots the dragon hurtling toward the store. Perfect. Both girls must bolt for the city before it crashes again, and the girl agrees, plunging down the rope to retreat. Tamaki whips around, locks eyes and vows she's counting on him from now on. The second girl urges him to be careful, and the main character flashes a confident grin and says, "Leave it to me." The protagonist plunged down and planted himself right in front of the dragon, daring him. The beast answered with a thunderous roar, spewing a choking plume of smoke from his jaws. He locks eyes with his enemy and resolves to bait him into one final showdown. The dragon barrels toward the building and the main character beckons it closer. As it rips a chunk from the store, he seizes the moment and orders the store to vanish. In an instant, the building the dragon was laying waste to vanished, and the beast froze, eyes wide with disbelief. Joy exploded in him as he realized everything had worked out. The dragon had crashed straight into the gaping hole left by the store. It slams into him. Every trap they'd rigged still held Cadiz. He remembers the voice that swore every preparation was finished. The dragon lies in the pit, its strength completely drained. It dawns on him. The instant a thought sparks, a shop snaps into being at his side. Each time the earth shudders and dust billows, because the shop hangs over a gap he could fall into. His pulse spikes as he pictures pulling it off in midair. He'd long since written off any chance to use that altitude-only technique, but the sudden drop makes conditions perfect, and when the rope snaps taut, he knows it's the signal. At his signal, he barks for everyone to yank the rope in unison, launching the main character skyward in a makeshift elevator. The main character plunges off the elevator straight at the dragon, screaming at him to try to swallow it, and the guy glares at his enemy with boiling fury. He bellows, "Store!" and a building materializes right above the dragon, plummeting down to crush him while the dragon watches impassively. The next instant the store plunged to the ground, slamming down onto the dragon, while the main character hung there, still suspended in midair. The dragon bellows and heaves a spray of blood from its maw as the main character slams down. The crowd stared, stunned. Swords and witchcraft had never been able to fell him before, but this strike landed, revealing his cataclysmic destructive power. The man intones, reverence in his voice. This dragon is ancient, and his name fits him like a crown. Stone-faced, the main character realizes the dragon, even after that savage attack, is fighting to get up. It heaves its forequarters and growls, and the guy lies in front of it. He rockets to his feet and bolts for the elevator, heart pounding as he realizes this was expected. An ancient dragon that won't die from a single strike. Then he's ripped up into the air. He plants himself, face set like flint, and chooses a different move. A man clutching a rope barks for everyone to clear out, while the main character hangs in the air and commands the store to vanish. He leaps off, shouts for the store to appear, and to finally finish the dragon he keeps rediscovering exactly what he needs. The protagonist clamps his jaw and vows to slay the dragon for good, then exploits the store's endless appearance to surge back and strike the beast again. The dragon bellowed and crashed face first into the dirt, and the guy slammed down again, panting for breath right in front of his fallen enemy. He dared to think he'd beaten him when a dragon's clawed paw suddenly shot into view, almost brushing his face. He snapped back and stared at the barely alive dragon. He feels it. The instant his vigilance slips a fraction, Cadiz will burst free and put them all in grave danger. The dragon shifts a massive paw. Gasping and pinned to the spot, a bolt of realization hits him. His vision blurs and he wonders, did his magic just run out? And does the store even require magical power to use? He spits a curse as realization slams into him. It might just be from a brutal lack of physical activity. The guy looks wrecked. All the people above lock eyes on the main character, shock flashing across their faces. The next instant he stumbles and begins to fall. He collapses and spins to face the guys as both girls erupt, shouting, "Kanata!" A private apology flashes through his mind, then everything goes black. He watches memories of everything around him collapsing into ruin. Then sees a little boy curled at his mother's motionless side, begging through tears for her to wake. She doesn't answer. Worry flared across his face, then a voice called to him and he froze, stunned. Canada freezes as two girls step in front of him. Worry carved into their faces for the guy. It's Tamaki and Tina, and recognition snaps through him. Sheena snaps at the guy. "What happened to Caddis?" Kanata shoots upright but crumples. He can't get up. Tamaki barks at him to calm down and stop springing to his feet. He needs to rest. Tina slaps her palm onto his shoulder, stealing his attention as she gasps. "You did it." He turns to the pit and sees the dragon, beaten and sprawled there. And the girl, tears in her eyes, chokes out that it's truly amazing. From the outer wall the crowd roared that George had defeated the Dragon of Cadiz. Cheers exploded, and hands shot into the air, and the two girls dove into the guy's arms, hugging him tight, grinning and crying that they'd done it, and everything had worked out. The sun blazed overhead as the outer wall's long agony finally broke, and the people above roared in victory. He shoots his gaze upward, a grin ripping across his face as the truth slams into him. Cadiz, the ancient earth dragon, has been defeated. Just days after the main hero crushed Cadiz, Cadena exploded into celebration. Streets draped in colorful victory flags as the whole city thrummed with festive energy. The whole town exploded into the streets. Every resident, from inside the walls to the farthest houses outside, poured out to drink, clink cups, and cheer congratulations. Exhaustion pinned the protagonist to his bed. He crashed out in his 24-hour store for days while shirts were added at level 4. The memory hit him like a knife. Through tears he realized that for some reason, his level hadn't budged. After the victory over Cadiz, it still read 24. He fires the question. Is it because he killed him with a convenience store? He's turned that over a few times, but his level rose when he was just running the business. The main character unveils his shop, a living arsenal bristling with arms, wings, legs, and weapons, and he aches for more chances to strike back soon. The girl, grinning, urges the main character to check how much they'd been given in the city. That haul could reshape the whole world. The second girl pleads with the guy to eat more and get better. He's fixated on the title in the saddest column being cool, when a girl suddenly smacks a slice of bread into his face and demands he eat it, while a second girl pleads with him not to. A few days later, the main character finally rejoined his post, and the smiling man declared he'd made a fortune because of him, and thanked him sincerely. The man shouts that the shop is thriving, promises he'll help the guy, and grabs the box from his hands. The crowd erupts, hailing him a hero as everyone rushes to greet him, shouting he's finally back, and the guy thanks the man. He sees the whole group buzzing with joy, gratitude swelling in his chest as he vows to thank them somehow. A stunned man spins to the guy and blurts, "Are you serious about this?" The man bellowed for the protagonist to hand over all of Cadiz. Frozen, the protagonist choked out a stunned yes and dared him to take it if he wanted. The man roars, "You're the best!" and sweeps the guy into a crushing hug. Then snaps orders to get to work. They'll sell everything taken from those rotten nobles at obscene prices. And the main character realizes this is cold, brilliant business acumen. Because of him, the chief unleashed a sumptuous feast, and the protagonist still tastes it in his memory, thinking it was so cool that he loved every single bite back then. Someone calls to him, and he spins, wondering what this time will bring. A portly man charges up, hailing him as the hero of the 24-hour mausoleum, and gushing that meeting him is a tremendous honor. A man in glasses stands behind, and the girl gasps. That's her father, and even Adonis. He begs his ungrateful daughter to keep out of his trade. The main character stares, stunned, and insists Tina's actually always been helping him, and the man snaps, "Is that true?" He boasts she should count herself lucky to have him. The protagonist freezes, stunned that he really is her father. He scoffs. "Is that the reaction you call gratitude?" A man leans in and asks the guy, "How do you feel about becoming my daughter's husband?" The girl and the main character freeze in stunned silence, and a voice from the back snaps, "He definitely doesn't." The girl whirls to her father and snaps, "What are you saying? You're scaring customers away. You'll wreck the business." The girl behind calls to the protagonist, "Are you Tina's father?" He answers, "Yes." Moments later, guilt plastered across her face, She rushes out an apology for her father's trouble. He grins and shrugs it off, saying he was only a little surprised. The girl corners Tina, asking if she hasn't been home in ages and guessing her father must be tearing his hair out with worry, while the main character figures Tamaki simply doesn't know what he truly is. Doubt claws at him. Does he even care for his daughter? His last visit screamed he wanted to seize the shop, and Tina scoffs that it's unlikely about her. She dropped a bombshell. Her family had 46 kids and she was number 23. The protagonist and Tamaki spat out their drinks, and Tamaki, horrified, yelped that 46 even outnumbers their whole class, so they're nobles. The man leans in, eyes fierce, and vows they'll dig into anything the protagonist asks about what happened, by any means. He tells Kanata that the legend of the convenience store hero who crushed Cadiz might already be sweeping the cities around Kadena and spilling into neighboring countries. And if Grandale catches wind, he senses they'll try something. The protagonist's face hardens as he snaps they're more than capable of pulling it off. And the Kingdom of Grandale only just began unveiling its heroes the other day. The hero handpicked a 4-man squad led by an immortal, and they ripped through the goblin-infested eastern cave and claimed it. Kanata dares to think things have finally moved forward. The first mock battle must be over, and the man presses on, saying a lone swordmaster stormed the lizard swamp in the southeast and annihilated every last one, leaving the protagonist and Tina gaping that he did it alone. The man warns the lizards wield terrifying power and pose a far deadlier threat, while whispers crown the hero swordsman the likeliest to slay the Dark Lord. Tamaki beams, asking, "You mean Shiori, the swordsman hero?" The protagonist's eyes snap wide. They know that name. She's the gaming club's FPS ace, but to him she felt like a lone wolf who shuns squad play and moves through the real world alone. The man bursts out, demanding to know when the kingdom's valiant heroes' achievements will thunder across foreign shores. If word gets out he slayed the legendary dragon nobody else would touch, every eye will snap to him. He doesn't need that. Grandale's in a tight spot, and Kanata turns to him and asks, "What's so funny about that?" Silent at first, the main character locks eyes with Errol and says he has a request. Errol blinks, then nods fiercely, promising to do whatever he's asked. Night swallowed the cliff where a ring of knights stared into the dark. A drone hummed overhead, and through its live feed on his screen he watched them, and realized they'd shown up far earlier than he'd expected. He seized the intel, teamed with Zero to tip off Grandale about the hero spotted at the store, and now, on the city's outskirts, someone fires the question at him. "Are you leaving the city?" Tamaki fires, bright-eyed. "Why?" The man confesses he loves it here and can't bear to leave, but someone's hunting him, and if Grandale's pursuers find him, they'll raise the whole city. He won't drag the residents into trouble. Now that Cadiz's threat has passed, the whole crowd hangs on his every word. Tamaki's voice cracked as she murmured, "It's a pity. He'd grown so friendly with everyone." And the guy nodded heavily, sharing her sorrow. With the city gates flung wide, food will pour through them into the outer wall, and the gulf between rich and poor will finally begin to close. He resolves to hand the store's supplies to everyone. At last those goods will do some real good. And Tina beams, certain the people beyond the outer wall will finally breathe easier. The protagonist proclaims Grandale won't need the city once he leaves, warns that if someone seizes the city's residents and holds it hostage, it could erupt into a serious crisis. But the man reassures the guy not to worry. He promises they'll spare civilians at this critical hour if he commands it, and with the money he supplied he can recruit mercenaries from the inner walls to defend the city. The man nods his thanks. Now mounted riders thunder by as the girls fling panicked glances over their shoulders. Kanata steels himself. If he can hold the pursuers off long enough to buy Tina and Tamaki time to reach the hill, then no matter their numbers, only he can pull it off. He pilots his drone over the crowd in front of the store, spots Mrs. Crusades and the heroes missing, and his gut clenches. There won't be any negotiations. They came to deal with him. He freezes as several robed figures trace glowing magic circles and unleash crackling attacks from them. He's stunned to realize it's real magic. Against all odds, the enchanted projectiles streaked to the shop, slammed into the barrier, and vanished without leaving a scratch. The knights froze in shock. The protagonist's gut screamed that he had to hurry. The fire shutter's magical barrier held rock solid. The knights stood baffled. They'd likely only been briefed on the store before it was even built. One of the knights thrusts his sword forward and barks at everyone to stop panicking and keep moving. They have to drag him out of this strange building. He roars the command, and a tide of armored knights surges straight at the building, battering its walls to tear it down. Knuckles battered the door. He realized there were too many of them for a fire extinguisher smokescreen to buy an escape, spat a curse at Grandale, and watched as someone slung a grappling hook over the roof's edge. Ropes scream as several knights are hoisted up to the roof, and he staggers, dumbstruck that so many people showed up just for him. A knight rears his sword high, then brings it crashing down from crown to boot. The main character sees it and knows everything's gone to hell. The girls stand on the rock, trembling with excitement as their thoughts snap to Kanata. Is he okay? Tamaki swears he'll be fine. He single-handedly defeated Cadus. He sees the knights battering the building again and knows it's bad. He grips a fire extinguisher, face carved into stone. Then the system pings. The 24-hour store hero's level has increased. A grin rips across his face as he realizes he somehow gained experience from the knights, tipping the scales in his favor. So the main character smiles, lifts his hand, and activates a status check. The status bar exploded into view with his info. His only skill is a level 5 shop. Stamina 8, Strength 8, Agility 6, Magic 0, Luck 8. He wields no mastered spells or skills. His title blazes, Legendary Earth Dragon Slayer. At first the main character lit up, whooping at the sight of lunchboxes and a microwave. This is simply amazing. Then suddenly they froze, eyes locking onto something that left them utterly bewildered. Kanata slams down at the computer and realizes the store is packed with things that shouldn't be on the shelves. He tells himself it has to be a mistake. Drones and machine guns ringed by shimmering magical barriers look completely out of place. HE steels himself, fingers flying over the mouse as he clicks the icon of the 5 Gatling machine guns, knowing now isn't the time to hesitate. He has to try. A jagged mechanical staccato ripped across the roof as 2 machine guns slammed into place, the knights freezing in bewilderment when they saw 2 5-shot automatic Gatling guns primed to repel any intruder. He reels, voice cracking. Is this really normal? A Gatling this powerful in a world of swords and magic? It shouldn't even be here. How is that possible? The impact machine gun flashes blank, and Kanata, doubting his conclusion but eager to test it, goes for it. When the system asks to start automatic mode, he clicks yes with the mouse. Machine guns on the roof explode into action, shredding through several knights in seconds while one knight's horse rears, terrified by the sudden assault. After the attack, the knights collapse to the ground, alive but drained, writhing and moaning, while the protagonist grins, realizes the power isn't lethal so he can use it safely, then turns to look and is stunned by what he sees. His eyes lock on the icon for the magazine rotation's variable function on the computer, and he presses it, heart racing as he puzzles out how to read it. On the roof, the knights tense as movement ripples below, wondering what this time will bring. The store suddenly spins like a runaway carousel, sending the knights on the roof scrambling and sliding for purchase while the crowd below gapes, frozen in stunned disbelief. 2 freeze in horror as a comrade plunges from the roof right in front of them, screaming. He beams, scoffing that nothing could surprise him now, then cracks up at the sight of the magazine actually spinning, grins again and slams the machine gun back into action as it whirls to life. The roof's machine guns roar again, riddling the knights by the store. Some bolt for cover, others drop to the ground instantly, and the knights cry, "What kind of building is this?" They had no warning and don't know what to do. The commander-in-chief, one of the knights, roars that Lord Drake, Prime Minister of Grandale, personally entrusted this mission to them, orders them not to return until it's a success, and to march on without fear. And Kanata wonders who Drake really is. He stands at the computer, sees their morale crumble, seizes a sudden chance to flee and clicks the mouse. The store's setup guarantees their escape plan will work, so he decides to try something else. Kanata triggers the drones. They rocket out over the street above the store, spewing a thick smokescreen into the night as people start gagging and coughing under the choking haze. He bursts from the building into a wall of smoke, clamps his hand over mouth and nose, knows he must seize the opening. And while the knights cough and suffocate, he bolts and plunges into the forest. They press up in front of him and explode into cheers at his arrival, roaring that he's a hero. Gasping, the protagonist told Tamaki she should have gone on ahead. A man draped a robe over the young man, and the girl said she'd thought it through. He never learned to ride, so he can't handle it himself, and she can slip into the shadows if needed. The girl vaults onto the horse first and yells at the guy to climb faster, but he croaks that he can't, he can barely move, and Zerial barks at them to hurry up. Tamaki's protagonist flashed a grin at the man, and Kanata's voice shook with heartfelt thanks for his help. Zerial shoots a sly wink, personally thanks the man for letting him rake in a fortune, and vows that if they're still breathing, fate will slam their paths back together. He waved them off with a shouted wish of luck. The horse thundered into a gallop. Tamaki and Kanata recoiled at the sudden surge. The rider spun and grinned, hollering thanks, and, Give my hello to everyone in the city. While the girl stared down the road, frozen with fear. He keeps watch over them for a long while, waving his hand as his white horse stands faithfully at his side. On a blazing day, moments before the legendary earth dragon Caddis was obliterated in the kingdom of Grandale. In the Great Hall, a girl beams at the visitor who'd come all the way from the west, thanks them for making the journey, and smiles as she asks how she can help. Kneeling before her, the boy warns that the Western Alliance is under a mounting onslaught from the Demon Lord's army. He's Karl Gensteiner, an envoy from Carteros, one of the Alliance's countries. He rasped they could barely stand, then dropped the bomb. Demons with minds who command magic had just been confirmed. The knights exchanged tense glances until a lone cough snapped them to their feet. She grinned and vowed they'd pour troops and supplies into their country, pledging to dispatch 10,000 soldiers to the expeditionary force immediately. Carlton's jaw dropped at the number. He admitted the whispers about her grace were true. She vowed to shoulder her nation's mantle and stand against the Demon King with them. But one crucial nuance hung in the air. Stone-faced, the guy glares at the girl and snaps, demanding to know if their newly summoned heroes can help them. A voice beside the girl choked out that the heroes from another world are being overrun by the Demon Lord's army. The fair-haired guy settles into his seat, grins like a dare, and declares that very soon they'll get their chance to prove their abilities. She nods, confirms everything's right, and urges them to give him a little more time. He's fixated on something. He broods over the fact that, in recent years, she lost both parents to a string of mysterious illnesses, and despite her youth, she inherited the throne, and the West now prizes her political gifts. And it eats him alive. The fair-haired guy snaps, "That's all. Let him calm his rulers down." And the respectful man leans forward, asks who he is, then hastily apologizes for not introducing himself yet. He announced he'd been summoned from another world 6 months ago, grinned and said he was glad to meet them, introduced himself as Kurimochi Yuto, a hero blessed with immortality. And the guy stared at him in stunned disbelief. Kneeling, Carlgan pleads with Uto, asking if he's a brave warrior from another world, desperate to win forgiveness for his rudeness. Yuto grins and admits that, even if it's practically a military secret, their handpicked squad already razed the goblin's eastern lair and smashed the lizard's dwelling. Those moments are seared into his memory, the day they'll finally fulfill their wish barrels toward them. Carlgan, lost in a stupor, blurts that he can't believe it, and the lizard's destruction was a brutal, breathtaking feat. Brimming with confidence, Carlton declares they'll deliver a solid report to the 3 countries. He thanks the audience, and the guy springs to his feet and bows. The guy slips out. The girl spins to Yuto and asks if he's okay. Yuto stands and answers, "Yes, everything's fine," while thinking this noisy Western Alliance at least deserves a report on the heroes. Yuto cups her chin and pleads with her not to drown in worry. If she listens, he swears, everything will be fine. She slips her hand into his, cheeks flaming, and shyly vows to do exactly as he says. A figure explodes into the hall, cuts them off, and bellows for His Majesty Kurimochi Yuto. An elderly man in a ceremonial headdress declares he has something to tell them. The girl reels in shock when she recognizes Prime Minister Drake, and Yuto, calm as a mountain, asks the man what the matter is. He tells how word crashed in. A hero from another world, calling himself the Convenience Store Hero, had slain the legendary Earth Dragon in the Western Autonomous Region of Kadena. Shock slams into Yuto and the girl as she gasps, "The Convenience Store Hero killed the dragon?" She won't believe it. The girl blurted, eyes shining. Didn't he say he was a villain who did evil while being a hero? Why did they treat him so terribly? She'd heard he'd endured unimaginable suffering, and he still regrets it. She whirls to Yuto, voice sharp. "Did you kill the Earth Dragon? Would a villain do that?" Yuto snaps for her to calm down, warning it's not that simple. It could be false information meant to deceive us. She screams at the Prime Minister, demanding he send a search party to Caden at once. They have to find him. Before she can finish, Yuto's hand shoots out. He snaps, "Sleep," and she begins to lose consciousness. After that, the girl slumbers on her throne. He exhales and snaps that those without self-control are a genuine threat to the country. She's naive, and he figures she can't yet grasp how vital it is to lie sometimes. She's still young. The Prime Minister lunges at Yudu. "Did you put her to sleep again? You're a bad man." And a guy ignores it, pivoting to the other man to bark, "Is that true?" He reports every merchant in Kadena is buzzing about the hero from the shop, so they're sure of it. And Uto grins, asking, if he's only a shopkeeper with no combat skills, how did he pull it off? He can't fathom what kind of monster the legendary Earth Dragon is, but he clings to the image of the deputy headman, also one of the chosen, standing at his side and coming to his aid, and Tamaki's face explodes into his mind. She's holed up on the city's outer rim. Seize her, let her confirm the truth, dispose of her, pin it on some monster, and march to the queen crowing their theory was proven. He presses the prime minister to let him launch a strike team immediately, and the prime minister greenlights the order. He seals the order with a cold nod. The system board flashes. Drake, prime minister of the kingdom of Grandale, branded usurper, tagged killed crusade, and parents with a spell, the man who made the young girl heir to the throne and will try to appropriate the kingdom's achievements. Yudo grinned, convinced he'd earned the title of usurper. An indispensable pawn. He rewired the queen's mind with his skills, so controls airtight, sealed by his advanced appraisal magic. Drake fired off a question about Assassin's heroine. Yudo snapped back, eyes narrowing. Don't worry, I'll deal with her myself. Unlike the bumbling store hero, she'll be impossible to miss. Someone huddles behind a column, and the man falls to his knees, begging forgiveness. Yuto glares at the column, face stone cold, and snaps that eavesdropping isn't allowed, declaring she's Shiori. The girl slips out from behind the column and plants herself in front of the man, a sword strapped to her back. The girl confesses she just got here and didn't catch a thing. The guy shows up to meet her, and Shiori flashes a sly smile and taunts him. Scared I'll overhear something you don't want me to? He scoffs, spits that he couldn't care less, and snaps she should be more accommodating. They're classmates, then demands if that's true, and she mumbles a sour, half-hearted apology, her voice flat because she doesn't care. She squares up in front of him and snaps that he's not plotting against their mission. Yudo fires back that, as headman, he always puts everyone's safety first. They toppled the Dark Lord and staggered back home alive. He scoffs. Someone cries that it's amazing. He's been frantic with worry for them, and when he learns they're all okay, he is stunned. The girl smirks and shoots back. It's because we can strike back where others can't. Yudo smiles and urges, I'm a hero serving this country. I won't disobey orders, so stop being selfish from now on. And she sighs in obvious displeasure. She demanded to know the chosen group's level. Yudo barked that they're all level 3 now, each one tougher than before, and she nodded, taking it in. She flashes all 5 fingers and snaps that they're now level 5. Going solo will be far more effective. He freezes, baffled, as she turns and walks off, declaring the legendary Earth Dragon has been killed. Suddenly she lit up, grinning, and announced the legendary Earth Dragon sounded like an irresistible quest. She wants in too, is dying to know his current level, and would hate for him to pull ahead. She strode on, grin bright and heart curious if she'd run into him somewhere, when 2 knights stepped out from around the corner. She realized he's already bound for Kadena, and when they snapped to attention and thanked her for the work, she forced her face into a solemn mask. The queen's eyes snap open and lock forward. Yudo cups the girl's chin and asks if she's okay. She asks if she slept. Suddenly the store's hero flashes back into her mind, and she knows she has to find out what's there. The guy asks her to listen to him carefully. He snaps that the store's so-called hero was actually an evil servant of the Dark Lord who wreaked havoc across the city, so she banished him from the kingdom. The girl stares with eyes blown wide, and he asks, Am I right? The girl suddenly beams sweetly and agrees. He realizes he must crank his charm magic up a notch. It'll take time, so he steels himself to try, then shoots the queen a sarcastic grin and asks if he's thinking correctly. The table groans under several gleaming containers of mouth-watering food, and the protagonist and 2 girls press both palms together, beaming as they cry out, Bon appétit! She declares the yakiniku lunchbox the best, and he never dreamed he'd be biting into a steaming lunchbox in another world. A night-and-day jump from surviving on 2 onigiri and tea. Tamaki devours her food and blurts to the girl that she wants to slip out behind the store, and the guy coldly replies he doesn't think he needs her that much. It's been about 5 days since they left the city of Kadena. They're riding hard west toward a distant land beyond Grandale's reach, devouring the miles on horseback. They grab food, clothing, and even a roof from the store, slipping through cities without stopping or leaving a trace, while the main character beams and declares it's incredibly convenient. His shop hit level 5 and he armed himself. The perfect shop he'd imagined was crossed out. He could hardly picture this twist, but he came out stronger. A flood of goods poured in, so much of everything. Tamaki snatched an item into her hands. The second girl peered at something, then spun to Kanata. She confesses she has no idea how to put the underwear on and begs him to explain. She glances back, crimson-faced, when Tamaki suddenly appears behind her, yanks her aside and declares she'll teach her. For them, and for the arrivals from another world, something even more astonishing materialized. Everyone gaped, eyes locked on a single box. Magazines, manga, novels, and photo collections from another world erupted into existence. Every kind of modern reading material had appeared. You could order only one type per day. Books popped up at random, and his stomach dropped when he realized it would take years to collect every issue. Tamaki, confusion flaring, demanded of the guy whether this really came from their world. Something's wrong. The protagonist concedes the content is similar, then blurts the only question that matters. Is this a parallel world? His expression snaps to stone as he realizes there isn't a single clue about their class's disappearance. Tina bursts out, stunned, rattling off questions about magical technologies and buzzing commercial hubs, cinemas, game consoles, household appliances, and amusement parks she's never seen. She's thrilled, so everything's fine. Tina's eyes pop as she snatches a magazine and declares this book of women in strange poses wildly interesting. Great Rex. Tamaki rips into the guy who ordered it, snarling that this photo collection from another world was banned from the first day. If they press on, they'll find themselves inside the territory of the alliance of the three Western kingdoms. The girls pounce, demanding answers about that alliance once more. Tina flashes a smile and warns that the Dark Lord's army constantly threatens these nations, so they've sworn to stand together. This land is the true front line, far more than Grandale to the east. To get there, you must cross the Dark Lord's Gorge. The main character's jaw drops. The protagonist stammers, "A castle? I'm not ready for that yet." Tamaki cuts him off. "No, it's not there. It's just a name. You should study this point." Tina flashes a smile and echoes Tamaki. The current Dark Lord's castle sits in his territory way out west past the three-country alliance. A guy tells Tamaki not to burst with pride, and Tina basks in her smug satisfaction. Legend says the Dark Lord's Gorge is both the stronghold and the tomb of colossal monsters that obeyed the Dark Lord when he once ruled the entire world in ancient times. The Dark Lord's curse steals every choice from anyone who plunges to the gorge's bottom, and the revelation slammed Antimaki with bone-deep fear. Tina reassures him it even applies to monsters, and that merchants follow safe, well-worn routes where they can rest easy. He sighs with relief and admits it sounds encouraging. He slumps into his chair and, voice tight, asks the question on everyone's mind. If they kill this Dark Lord, won't he just come back? Tamaki nods, coolly admitting it's possible, and snaps, "What choice do we have?" Tina goes stone still as despair washes over her. She bursts out to her friends, confessing she knows something. Doubt gnaws at her and she has no proof. She leans in and drops the bomb. There's a book called Forbidden Knowledge in this world, but it's buried and almost impossible to find, and the protagonist and Tamaki gape in shock. Tina reports whispers that the church torched most of those forbidden books into ash, erasing any chance they'd ever be read. Even as a child, she stumbled onto a forbidden tome in Kadina's underground library, grabbed it from the dust, read its pages out of pure curiosity, and froze, stunned by what she found. Tina's worried eyes cut through the room as she dropped the bomb. The Dark Lord plaguing this world was created by heroes summoned from another world, and the protagonist and Tamaki stood stunned. Tamaki bursts out, eyes blazing. "So this means we become Dark Lords?" The man answers grimly. "To beat a Dark Lord, they summon heroes from another world, and those heroes end up becoming the next lords, trapped in a vicious, never-ending cycle." She shut her eyes and dropped a bomb. No one can confirm it now, but whispers say that among the heroes summoned from other worlds, those with certain powers will eventually become Dark Lords. Ancients knew this, and the moment a man with those powers appeared when a hero was called, they moved instantly to hunt him down and snuff him out. Tamaki grins and asks if they're okay and will stay untouched. The protagonist's mind snaps to a hero who could turn into a Dark Lord. Only Yuto Kuramochi flashes into his mind. He conjures that man's face and burns with the certainty he won't be the last ruler. The main character whirls to Tina and snaps, "What did the writing say about these abilities, and what are they supposed to become?" She grimly announces this section's been wrecked. The text screams it's describing powers unlike any other heroes, and worry trembles in her voice. He brags his shop is special, if you can even call it that. Yet not a single hint of a Dark Lord dares to touch it. He writes off the protective measures as dangerous and useless for this. Then Tamaki's eyes snap open. She remembers there are also hot lunches and irresistible sweets, and those treats are what save the people by the outer wall. Grinning, the protagonist tells her she's too cheerful and clumsy to be an assassin, and she freezes, stunned, stammering, "Could you praise me?" Tina pulls the girl close and beams, gushing that Tamaki is a cute and nice hero she adores. The protagonist watches with displeasure as the guy asks Tina if he can ask another question. and she agrees. Kanata fires the question at the girl. After the heroes from another world topple the Lord, do they ever return to their homeworld? The girl falls silent, turning Kanata's question over with a grave, searching stare, her voice tight with worry. She says the legends go mysteriously silent after that. One version claims some stayed in this world, living the same ordinary days until their last breath. Proof. In this world, the gifted are almost never born. Only descendants whose distant ancestors ran with heroes' blood inherit powers, and she is a newborn, living proof. Understanding snaps into her. The girl's face floods back and a cold doubt claws up. Was everything Crusade told her a lie? Kanata declared to Tina that Queen Grandale had revealed a powerful magic that could send the heroes back to their home world. Tina pressed about the queen again, admitted she knew nothing, and begged for forgiveness. Grandale's a venerable kingdom that summoned heroes since antiquity. She could have smuggled in secret magic from another world right under their noses. The protagonist snaps. Anyway, like I said, we must defeat the Dark Lord now. Tamaki, voice trembling, admits that's the whole story, and that she's a little scared. And Tina suddenly whirls to face Kanata and Tamaki at once, her voice cracking with worry. She locks eyes with her two friends and pleads, "If we defeat the Dark Lord, will both of you return to your original world?" Both of them freeze, shock flashing across their faces. A jolt rips through them. They remember they must return home, but the girl suddenly clamps both hands over her mouth. In a heartbeat, she lets her hands fall, steels herself, and begs the two sitting there for forgiveness. She snaps, "Is this exactly why we're pushing forward now?" First, they must head straight for the three-country Western Alliance. The protagonist and Tamaki lock eyes on the girl, minds racing. Then it's time to head out. Tamaki rushes to help Tina while the protagonist gets lost in thought. A wildfire of curiosity about the heroes who came before him burned inside. When the time came for them to decide, he threw his head back and stared at the sky. They pressed on, and after weeks they finally arrived at the Dark Lord's ravine, a lone signpost looming at its edge. Their whole group gaped as the gorge's floor disappeared into blackness, a cold dread snapping through them at the thought of demons down there. Ancient servants of the Dark Lord who survived and towered as huge as Cat is. Maybe even bigger. They can't help admitting the Dark Lord who once controlled them was probably way cooler than Cat is. He presses Tina for what felled him, and she admits the ancient books hold no record of his defeat. So she's just as determined to uncover the truth. The protagonist says he heard about this during classes as part of the hero training program. The guy whips around, sees Tamaki and her horse simply vanish, gasps, "Where is she?" and is stunned by her disappearance. Tina says that, as far as she remembers, Tamaki volunteered to go on reconnaissance. The girl asked her to be careful. The guy shrugged it off. Now he spins to Tina and snaps, "Are you serious?" A bitter knot tightened in him as he realized she'd been doing whatever she wanted for ages, and memories slammed into him. How she'd constantly ditched him and their friend for the cat or a snack. The boy vows he'll go find Tina and tells her to rest. She nods, urges them to be careful, and can't even wave to the girl who stayed with the horse. The main character strides along the gorge, sweeping his gaze around. Then something suddenly snaps into view and seizes his attention. He spots the silhouette and knows she's here. Relief floods him that she didn't stray far from them. Then a sudden shock rips through him. He gapes as a tear-streaked girl pummels an invisible wall, screaming. Someone laughs and tells him, "You're alive!" and he stands frozen, watching in silence. Two figures flank the girl trapped in a cone-shaped crystal. The man on the right flashes a grin at Kanata and says, "Haven't seen you in ages," calling him the guy from the store. Recognition slammed into him, plunging him into a stupor. Kanamori and Natori Mitsuki were here, and the bespectacled girl, a shield mage, stood like a bastion with a face of iron. Kanata assumes she's a quiet girl in glasses, but she's actually an obsessed stalker who worships Kuramochi and spied on him from around the corner. They both glare at the boy, and it hits him like a blow. They're just two bespectacled submissive servants, and even Mitsuki is among them. Kanamori reports that by sweeping a wide protective field, you can zero in on the person or group, and a protective barrier can not only seal them in, but shut down their abilities. He taunts the protagonist with a mocking, "Surprised?" Mitsuki's rage snaps at the man. Tamaki, locked up, stares between them in confusion, and the protagonist suddenly realizes she's furious, and that this outburst is Mitsuki's ability. Kanamori snaps that they've already seized the vice president, and Tamaki's jaw tightens as dread washes over him. Kanamori roars that he's Grandale's biggest criminal, swears he'll drag Kanata to justice, then flashes a sickening grin and jabs a finger at the protagonist. The protagonist roars that he's been falsely accused. The other sneers, "Scared? Every criminal says that." The protagonist snaps, "What kind of justice is this? Taking hostages." The man's calm snaps and fury lashes out. Kanamori throws down a brutal dare. Don't sink to the bottom under the crushing water. Dodge and win, and maybe they'll free the girl they've locked up. The protagonist weighs the offer. Kanamori lunged, unleashing Darkwater Stream. A colossal torrent barreled straight at the protagonist. Tina perches and rewinds every moment with her partners. Laughter, wounds, promises, and a cold truth hits. If they defeat the Dark Lord, she'll have to say goodbye to both of them. Her horse chewing quietly at her side. A sudden sound, probably rushing water, shatters the quiet, and dread claws at her as her thoughts snap to Kanata and Tamaki. A thunderous rumble shatters the air, and both of the main character's enemies reel in shock as the main character's store building materializes right before them, leaving them utterly perplexed. A tidal wall slams into the shop, fanning out to both sides and rushing around the main character, leaving them utterly unharmed. The bespectacled man snarls at Kanata. "Did you use his shop as a shield?" The protagonist grins, raises a hand, and apologizes to Kanamori, saying he's not the same person he was back then. Kanamori freezes, rage flaring through him as Tamaki watches and exults in his success. The guy with glasses snaps that it irritates him, leaving the protagonist utterly baffled. Kanamori lashes his hand up in fury, shouting the guy's smug face is an eyesore, and that he hasn't the faintest idea what Kanamori's about to do. Kanamori cuts off mid-word and goes stone still. The main character springs to his feet, covering himself with his hands. They froze in silence for a long moment, the main character watching intently, his gaze razor-focused on that single thing. Out of nowhere, Kanamori convulses with coughing, writhes in agony, and collapses to his knees. The girl beside him stares at her partner, bewildered, and Kanata yells, "What's happening?" The bespectacled man stomps his foot in fury and snaps at the main character. "What did you just do to me?" Air deserts the main character, leaving him gasping and baffled because he did nothing. Someone turns to Kanata and Tamaki, then the man whips his gaze back. It's Tina. She locks eyes with the main character, excitement sparking in her gaze. The guy reels, stunned by her sudden arrival, and Kanamori grins disgustingly as he stares at her. He snaps at them. Is she in on this too? Water gathers near the guy's hand, and the main character's eyes lock onto it. Kanata screams at the girl to run away from here, but Kanamori laughs coldly, sneering that it's already too late. He's going to use the dark water flow again. The main character bolts to help the girl, and she spins, wide-eyed, as the guy reaches out and yells her name. She plummets over the cliff. The main character rockets after her and snatches her from mid-air. The two of them plummet into the abyss. He stares down with a stone-cold face. Then his silence rips open into a scream. Memories crash back, pulling up every trace of his life in the big city. Memory snaps back. The girl in front of him waved and shouted, "Good morning," and the guy beside her echoed it. He ripped off his headphones and shot the greeting right back. Tamaki spots the sign and her grin explodes. She beams, practically bouncing as she excitedly pitches going there after school. He snaps awake in his classroom as the room erupts with smiling classmates calling out bright, "Good morning," to each other. Clusters chattered in circles, others hunched over their phones, a few devoured books, and some lay down, sinking into sleep. A towering blonde bursts into the classroom, declaring the morning meeting will start the instant the teacher walks in. "So everyone, take your seats," he says, clutching something in his arms. An eerie charge rippled through the office, everyone snapping to attention and murmuring, "What is that?" Then a scream blasted through the room. The main character groans in his sleep, pries his eyes open, lies back and stares up as if he'd just glimpsed a warm dream from his past. A gaping hole yawns in the ceiling and he wonders if the store just saved him. Then he spots Tina sprawled on it, knocked out cold. The guy blurts, "Are you okay?" The girl jolts awake and accidentally smacks the protagonist in the face. The guy winces and cries out that he's in pain, and she gapes at him, utterly bewildered. She spins to Kanata and apologizes to him, voice raw as she says it was all because she was there. The guy narrows one eye and admits he dragged her into this. He hurled himself into a sudden hug. She gasped, stunned, and he said, "It's good that you're okay," then admitted, "I'm really, really happy." All at once her face settles into calm, and a soft smile blooms. She wraps him in a tight hug in return and bursts into tears of joy. They both sprang up. The girl demanded of Kanata where they were, and when the protagonist peered outside, he froze. At the very bottom of Demon Valley, hulking silhouettes of monsters loomed. They clamber across the rocks for a while, then slip past a snarling monster. The protagonist rings his shop as Tina shoots a worried look over her shoulder. They storm down the stairs with the main character leading the way, declaring this his underground shelter. He'd known they'd added something new, but inside it's almost the same as the Combini office. The protagonist plants himself at the computer, heart hammering. Something colossal prowls outside, so this cramped spot feels safer than the exposed upper office. She nods, and he opts to scout first. Tapping the drone icon, he launches the drone to slip just outside the building and survey the surroundings. They freeze as a colossal dragon rips into view. The girl gasps, "Is that Cade's?" Canada shakes his head. "No, it's way bigger than the one I defeated in Kadena City. Its color's different, maybe a subspecies." Not just one dragon, several of them circle the place, and the serious-faced guy instantly realizes this means they're at the bottom of the Demon Valley. Her eyes snap to the screen. She shouts to him and jabs a finger as a round creature barrels straight at them. Horror rips through the main character as the creature barrels through the store, leaving nothing behind. He staggers when their shop is blown to pieces, and the girl stands frozen beside him, eyes wide with terror. The girl scans the area and snaps, "Then why wasn't the shelter damaged?" The main character's gaze locks onto it. He notices it too. He swears the store crumbled, and yet not a single tremor or sound reached them, as if this place sits in its own pocket dimension, and the room around them is swallowed by pitch black. He knows the mechanic is bizarre, but relief floods him. He's glad it exists, and he can practically feel the Combini inflating, bracing itself for the trouble headed their way. Kanata steels themselves and rockets skyward to find just how high they can climb. The drone rockets upward, 200 meters, 300, 400, surging past 1,000 and 2,000, and finally pierces the sky at 4 million meters. The main character reports the depth here is very serious. The girl gasps she sees light. Then an explosion rips through. The drone camera's image vanishes, and both of them reel in shock. A cold dread slammed into her. Was this the same demon curse Tyke had warned about? Tyke had said that once you plunged to the curse's bottom, you'd never climb back out. She swears she's never seen this before. But farther on, a powerful magical barrier has been erected. The main character choked in horror. Does this mean they'll never escape this valley? The monitor spat a stark message. No signal. The main character and the girl tore forward, shock on their faces, when the guy screamed, "Tina, run faster!" and panic clawed at the girl's throat. Kanata roars at Tina to unleash Lightning Dash. She snaps, "Got it!" The guy screams, "Store, come!" The store materializes in front of them, and they bolt inside as a colossal dragon bears down behind them. She barks at the guy to hurry up, and the main character lunges, thrusting his hand out toward somewhere. The next heartbeat, the dragon's clawed paw blasted through the shop, ripping the walls to pieces and impaling everything inside. The protagonist tumbles down the stairs and grins, thinking it's good they're moving to a place that seems better. Tina screams, "Cannot! His name!" And the guy lies on the floor and thinks this is a completely impossible game. The dragon gapes at the door planted on his claw, dumbfounded. Kanata says at least their supplies are well restocked. A tiny squeak cuts the air. The system pings the guy that the store level has increased, and he freezes in shocked disbelief. The notification chimed again and again, each ping leaving him wide-eyed. He'd expected it only once, but it slammed in 4 times straight, and Tina stared at him, utterly bewildered. He confesses his level just skyrocketed by 4, and Tina, ecstatic, squeals that this is really great. She leans in, eyes alight with curiosity, and asks the guy if there's anything new. The main character snaps his hand up and decides to check the status. A table explodes into existence, piled high with added products and added household goods. The main character stares in stunned disbelief. The assortment looks exactly like a real store, and Tina's jaw drops too. He practically explodes with joy. But food isn't what they need now. Of all the solid objects they have, there's only one shower, and he slips inside, mapping the bunker's layout in his head. He spat. "You expect me to pick from the bottom of this abyss? Where's the weapon? Our store's already teetering on the edge of ruin." Kanata slammed his fist under the table and buried his face in his hands, apologizing to Tina as he choked out that he might not be able to save her. Powerless, while the girl begged him not to lose his mind. She clasps his hand, beaming as she declares they could really use a shower too, and reassures him with bright, happy certainty that everything's fine, and he freezes in surprise and says her name. She beams and thrusts a mountain of tea and sandwiches at him. When he asks if there's anything to eat, She grins and says it's exactly because they're in this mess that she brought a whole pile of different food. Tina flashes a smile and tells him to quit panicking and think up an escape together. After a bite, their heads clear and bright ideas pop. And even stuck at the bottom of the gorge, everything feels livable when they're side by side. So they rally their spirits and move forward while the main character flushes with embarrassment. He admits she's right, declares it's far too early to give up, thanks her for always having his back, and Tina beams that she's glad he's in a good mood again. Her face lit up as she confessed they hadn't been alone together in so long, and he snapped, "What did you just say?" They retreated underground that day, sealing themselves in a shelter and living as recluses. The girl let hot water cascade over her, steam swallowing the room. They'd weathered countless attacks and defenses, and after all that his level had climbed by only one, rage boiled in his veins.